Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Jasmine Pace. Jasmine Pace, a 22-year-old college student, planned to spend Thanksgiving 2022 with her family. However, her plans suddenly changed, leaving her mother surprised. At the last moment, she sent a message canceling the family gathering. Shortly afterward, a new post appeared on Jasmine's Facebook page that read, "Enjoy Thanksgiving with my baby," accompanied by a photo that raised concerns. Initially confused, her family's concern quickly escalated into panic when they realized something was wrong. Jasmine was missing, and someone seemed to be impersonating her online. On the night of November 22, 2022, Jasmine drove a white Chevy Equinox away from her home in Chattanooga, Tennessee, at approximately 11:30 p.m. Later, her mother, Katrina Bean, received a text from Jasmine's phone stating that she would spend the rest of the week at her friend Emma's house. Since Jasmine was grieving the recent loss of her grandmother to cancer, her decision to skip the family gathering didn't immediately alarm her loved ones. She often withdrew for short periods to cope with her emotions. But everything took a troubling turn when Jasmine made a Facebook post. The post featured Jasmine in an uncharacteristically revealing outfit, which surprised her mother. What alarmed her father, Travis Pace, was even more troubling. Jasmine's extensive tattoos were missing from the photo. Each tattoo represented a timeline in her life, added months apart, creating a distinctive pattern, especially on her right arm. The glaring absence of these tattoos confirmed the post was fake, and Jasmine's family realized the situation was far worse than they had imagined. Katrina reached out to Jasmine's friend Emma and confirmed what she had suspected. Jasmine had been missing from her family for a week, contradicting the claims in a recent message. Several other friends and family members had also received suspicious messages supposedly from Jasmine, all of which raised concerns. The family immediately began searching for her. Jasmine's SUV, equipped with a GPS feature from the My Chevrolet app, allowed her mother to track its location. The car was found parked outside a building on Mountain Creek Road in Chattanooga. By the time it was discovered, it was 8:30 p.m. on November 26, 4 days after Jasmine was last seen leaving her mother's house late on the evening of the 22nd. The area where the car was located was unfamiliar to the family, and as far as they knew, Jasmine didn't know anyone there. When they approached the car, they noticed that the driver's seat was pushed far back, suggesting that someone much taller than the petite Jasmine had been driving. The family contacted the police, who arrived on the scene and filed a report describing the situation. Katrina also reached out to the family's cell phone provider. Since Jasmine was part of their family plan, her mother, Katrina, had access to her phone records. The records revealed that there had been no calls from Jasmine's phone for several days. In the presence of the police, Katrina began calling the numbers listed in the call log. One number stood out, a call with someone Jasmine had spoken to for over an hour on the night of the 22nd. When Katrina dialed that number, it connected to a young man named Jason, whom Jasmine had recently met on a dating app. Jason, a computer science student at a university in Chattanooga, had been casually dating Jasmine for a few months. Their relationship was not serious, so Jasmine never introduced him to her parents, Katrina and Travis, who didn't know him. When Jasmine was reported missing, Jason claimed he hadn't heard from her in several days and that their last conversation had been brief. However, Katrina found his behavior suspicious and felt he might be lying. His apparent lack of concern further alarmed her. Despite Katrina urging the police to dig deeper, they refused, arguing that Jasmine was an adult and there was no clear evidence of foul play. Determined to find their daughter, Katrina and Travis began knocking on doors throughout the apartment complex on Mountain Creek Road. Unfortunately, no neighbors had seen Jasmine. They sought help from the apartment guard, who provided security camera footage. The video showed a white Chevrolet entering the parking lot. By cross-referencing this footage with timestamps from the My Chevrolet app, they pinpointed the general time frame but couldn't identify the driver. Katrina then noticed an unread text message from Jasmine, sent on November 23. The message included a location and timestamp showing Jasmine's device had been at a specific place at 2:18 a.m. This was highly unusual, as Jasmine had never sent such cryptic messages, especially during the night. Acting quickly, Katrina and Travis went straight to the address mentioned in the message. Jasmine's parents, Katrina and Travis, knocked on every door in the building, paying particular attention to room 210. Neighbors mentioned hearing a loud noise from that unit around 2:15 a.m. on November 23. Upon investigation, Katrina and Travis quickly discovered that the tenant of the apartment was Jason. The unit was quite small, consisting of a kitchenette near the sofa, a hallway leading to the bedroom, and a single bathroom. From the front door, they could see a small duffel bag filled with cleaning supplies sitting on the kitchen table. While searching, Travis found Jasmine's driver's license and credit cards in a drawer. They called the police again, but after speaking with Katrina and the neighbors, the officers left, citing a lack of immediate evidence of foul play. Frustrated by the lack of action, Katrina went back to the apartment several times over the next few hours. She collected items like laptops, electronics, cell phones, a camera, and an iPad, anything that might offer clues to her daughter's whereabouts. She and Travis also searched the trash cans outside the building. Nearly at midnight, the police finally returned to room 210 with a search warrant and officially began their investigation. During the inspection, they observed suspicious stains resembling blood in multiple areas, on the wooden floor in the living room, the linoleum in the bathroom, and the carpet in the bedroom. They also discovered blood stains on the bathroom doors and walls. The substantial amount of cleaning supplies found in the apartment further heightened suspicions. At the scene, police seized a pair of white sneakers and blue pants for further investigation. In the living room, broken glass fragments hinted at a possible violent altercation. In the bedroom, the furniture appeared to have been moved, suggesting attempts to conceal signs of a struggle. This discovery led investigators to focus more intently on piecing together the unsettling clues surrounding Jasmine's disappearance. In some parts of the apartment, it was evident that furniture had been rearranged to hide evidence. A kitchen knife was found on the bed, and stains that could potentially be blood were present in nearly every room. A forensic team was brought in to apply a specialized solution designed to detect traces of blood. The investigation shifted from a missing persons case to a murder inquiry. Detectives obtained CCTV footage from the apartment building and nearby areas to construct a timeline of Jason Chen's movements, hoping it would lead to locating Jasmine Pace. Investigators confirmed that Jasmine arrived at 110 Tremont before midnight on November 22. Her Chevrolet was seen entering the building's parking lot and later leaving, with investigators tracking the vehicle to the apartment complex where Jason lived. The day after her arrival, Jasmine was recorded leaving the building, wearing a hoodie. A surveillance camera at the apartment's entrance captured Jason leaving multiple times, including at 7:30 p.m. Just 3 minutes later, someone in a light-colored sweatshirt was seen driving Jasmine's SUV to the Signal View condo, where the vehicle was abandoned. On November 23, 2022, Jason took several suspicious trips. In the morning, he went to Walmart and purchased hydrogen peroxide, cleaning supplies, and a pair of white sneakers, which were clearly visible on the store's surveillance footage. These sneakers were later found discarded in a trash can near the apartment complex. That evening, Jason visited Ukraine to buy a pack of paper towels. Between the Walmart trip and disposing of some clothes, investigators believe Jason was attempting to conceal evidence. His movements were monitored through various surveillance videos across Chattanooga, where his distinctive white sweatshirt made him easily identifiable even in blurry footage. Around 6 p.m. on the 23rd, a man in a white sweatshirt was filmed struggling to move a large suitcase from the apartment entrance to the parking lot. Shortly afterward, Jason's black Toyota Camry was seen driving away. On November 29th, a week after Jasmine's disappearance, Jason was found at his parents' home. The arresting officers in Nolanville observed cuts on Jason's arms and legs, suggesting a violent encounter. A search warrant was issued for the home, resulting in the seizure of a black backpack and handwritten notes from the room Jason had been staying in. The notes appeared to show him trying to construct his version of the incident. Detectives discovered Jason had last seen Jasmine on November 19th, according to notes he made. He claimed they had spoken and mentioned that Jasmine struggled with mental health issues. Jason seemingly prepared for his eventual questioning by portraying Jasmine as homeless. During a search of Jason's backpack, detectives found his phone and a SIM card removed from Jasmine's phone. Upon examining Jason's phone, investigators recovered a photo of Jasmine standing in his bathroom on the night she disappeared. They also found screenshots of text messages from Jasmine, though the content of the messages was missing. The morning following Jasmine's apparent death, Jason sent her a photo captioned, "Slept like a baby," followed by a text later that day saying, "We'll meet again tonight." Metadata revealed the photo had been taken 2 years earlier. Jasmine's phone records showed she visited Walmart with Jason on the morning she disappeared, but surveillance footage only captured Jason shopping alone. Investigators traced Jason's movements, revealing that he loaded a large suitcase into his Toyota Camry and drove to Suck Creek Road near the riverbank. On December 1st, Thursday, investigators found a suitcase along the riverbank. It belonged to Jason and contained Jasmine's body. She was wrapped in 3 garbage bags and restrained with handcuffs. Her right hand was cuffed to her right ankle, while her left ankle was cuffed to her right elbow. The handcuffs were basic models, not police issue, with one chain broken. An autopsy confirmed Jasmine had been fatally attacked, with the bullet concentrated in a single area of her body. In December 2022, Jason Chen's bail was set at $5 million, sparking outrage due to the disturbing details of Jasmine's murder. Many believed he shouldn't have been offered bail at all. Evidence revealed that Jason had accessed Jasmine's phone and SIM card to manage her bank account and post fake messages after her death. During his opening statement on the first day of court proceedings, lawyer Josh Weiss did not claim his client's innocence. He acknowledged that Jason killed Jasmine but argued that it was unintentional. The prosecution did not pursue the death penalty. If convicted of first-degree murder, Jason faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. His best chance for a lighter sentence would be to plead to a lesser charge, such as manslaughter. To do this, the defense aimed to convince the jury that Jason killed Jasmine in a moment of passion, having been provoked into an extreme emotional reaction that resulted in her death. The defense's arguments suggested that they had been drinking wine late at night at Jason's home, and that Jasmine had gone to the kitchen to get water. While there, she allegedly heard constant notifications from a dating app on Jason's phone. This led to an argument between the two, during which Jasmine reportedly attacked Jason with a broken wine glass. Jason, who had earlier taken a kitchen knife to his bedroom to open a bottle of wine, used the knife during the struggle. The defense explained the stains on Jasmine's body as part of an incident that occurred after the attack. They claimed Jason panicked after the attack and handcuffed Jasmine to fit her into a suitcase. Video recordings from Jason and Jasmine's phones, along with testimony from neighbors, provided a timeline of the murder and Jason's attempts to cover it up. Neighbor Courtney Brewer testified to hearing an argument after 2 a.m. The reconstruction of the murder relied heavily on the physical evidence found at the crime scene, but this is where the case became complicated. Police applied a chemical to various items at the crime scene, including a broken knife. Katrina inspected and searched the crime scene. The defense later called its expert to highlight significant changes observed between the initial police response and the scene's documentation. Furniture had been moved, and questions arose about whether certain items were relevant evidence. Travis testified that, when he initially entered the room with Katrina to find their daughter, he didn't see a knife on the bed. The medical examiner determined the attack was deliberate and found no suspicious evidence contradicting this conclusion. Based on the location of the wounds, Jasmine was likely in a fetal position during the assault. The handcuffs she wore were most likely applied while she was still alive. Additionally, the medical examiner found no alcohol in her system, which contradicted Jason's claim that they had been drinking wine. Jason's argument that Jasmine provoked him by becoming angry over dating app notifications was proven false. A state expert reviewed the app's data and confirmed no notifications were received. Jason chose not to testify in his defense. Evidence was presented quickly. Jason's lawyer withdrew support for his initial story, instead highlighting the absence of handcuff marks on Jasmine's wrists, which would have been visible if she had been alive when restrained. The presence of handcuffs suggested that the attack was premeditated. The number of wounds indicated that Jason had sufficient time to think through and carry out the assault. During closing arguments, prosecutor Cody Vamp outlined the sequence of events, including Courtney Brewer hearing someone running to the apartment door at 2 a.m. The jury began deliberating after the final arguments and delivered a verdict shortly afterward. One juror confirmed that the repeated visits by Jasmine Pace's family to the crime scene did not influence their decision. At the sentencing phase, jurors had to decide whether Jason Chen should ever be eligible for parole. Jason's attorney appealed to the jury, asking them to grant his client a chance for redemption. However, the jury deliberated for less than an hour and ultimately convicted Jason Chen of first-degree murder, sentencing him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Following the conviction, Jasmine Pace's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Jason Chen's parents. They accused the parents of harboring Jason, giving him money, and sharing information during the days after the murder while he was the prime suspect and their daughter was still missing. The loss of Jasmine and the ensuing legal battles deeply affected the Pace family. After the sentencing, the trials surrounding Jason Chen, referred to by the family as a monster, were marked by overwhelming grief. Prosecutors condemned his crime as heinous, cruel, and inhumane. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Marbella Valdez. One was born in Tijuana, Mexico's second-largest city, located in the state of Baja California. In 2020, when this case was being developed, one was 40 years old and owned a cleaning company. Although this was his main job, he seemed to have a true passion for the security sector. On one occasion, he interned at the forensic office of the state prosecutor's office. He is still passionate about being a law enforcement officer. Occasionally, he would even go out on the streets dressed in a police uniform. In August 2019, one met a 20-year-old girl named Marbella Valdez. She has a sweet and cheerful personality. She is often called Bella by her family and friends. As a child, she experienced many hardships. At the age of 5, she was sent to an orphanage. She continued to spend the following years in such facilities. According to local pastor David Lopez, who was present when the girl was admitted to the orphanage, she quickly demonstrated her kind nature and goodwill. This helped her win love and respect from the other children, as well as from the staff there. Although facing many difficulties, Marbella still feels optimistic and loves life. At the orphanage, she made friends like Brenda Valdez and Jairo Solana. Brenda became very close to her. Pastor David observed that they were often playing together and always by each other's side during various activities. They always love, help, and protect each other. Brenda took on the role of an older sister who was always there for her. Over time, Marbella started dreaming of a better future and successfully completed both primary and secondary school. She was considered a good student and actively participated in youth religious groups. She realized that progress comes from studying and working hard, so she started selling sweets to her schoolmates at the age of 16 and did extra work as a house cleaner. Fortunately, on her journey to success, Marbella had support. William Messick, an American IT executive, had been helping her and Brenda for some time. In 2014, he started a program to aid orphans from Tijuana, Mexico. His idea is to help children during the most difficult and vulnerable stages of their lives, until they are mature enough to face life on their own. Having been an orphan himself, William understood their struggles. His project included a scholarship program. After meeting Brenda, they formed a close bond, like father and daughter. Brenda told him about her friend, Marbella, from the orphanage, and soon he included Marbella in his program. In 2018, Marbella graduated from high school. She then enrolled at the Autonomous University of Baja California to pursue her dream of becoming a lawyer, with a focus on protecting children's rights. As she entered adulthood, William helped both Marbella and Brenda rent an apartment. Later, when she expressed her desire to live independently, and William once again supported her, acknowledging her maturity and sense of responsibility. During this time, she started university and also looked for a job to support herself. With William's help, she even purchased a car to commute easily between work, university, and home. Marbella started working at a gas station owned by Randy Chicas, a Mexican company that supports women. Her shift began at 5:30 a.m. and ended at noon. After lunch, she would head to the university to study law. Despite her packed schedule, but she made time for church services. It was at the gas station that she met Juan, who owned a cleaning company. One day, he stopped by to fill up the company car. He was immediately attracted by the friendliness and charm of Marbella. From then on, he made it a point to visit the station almost daily, filling up his cars and trying to strike up a conversation with Marbella. She treated him with the same courtesy and smile she gave to all her other customers. Soon, Juan started giving Marbella gifts, such as sweets, toys, and chocolate. He even brought breakfast for her and other female employees. She told William, who she thought of as her father, about Juan's actions. William warned Marbella to be careful since Juan was much older. However, she said she wasn't interested in Juan. For she, a 20-year-old girl, the attention of an older person like Juan seemed funny and even ridiculous. Her colleagues also found the situation funny. Everyone considered Juan to be a friendly and respectable person, not a threat to young girls. Marbella made it clear she wasn't interested in Juan and often turned down his invitations to meet. Juan didn't take these rejections well, and his behavior started to change. Marbella noticed that Juan would often follow her after her shift at the gas station. He seemed to always know her whereabouts and would appear, asking her to go with him. There were times when she suspected he of following her home. She mentioned this strange behavior to her colleagues. On Wednesday, February 5, 2020, Marbella failed to show up for work at the gas station and did not contact anyone to explain her absence. Marbella and her friend Brenda, although not living together, would meet up several times a week. Brenda had a young son whom Marbella adored and visited often. They would talk on the phone daily. Brenda, who worked the night shift, would usually call Marbella every morning after returning home. That Wednesday, Brenda and Marbella didn't talk as usual. Brenda woke up around 9 a.m. to find a message from Marbella saying she had a stomach ache and wouldn't be going to work. Instead, she planned to see a doctor. This message worried Brenda for two reasons: her health and the unusual manner in which the message was written. It was also strange that she didn't call. Brenda tried to reach Marbella but couldn't, so she contacted their mutual friends. However, none of them had any information about Marbella's whereabouts. The group of friends began searching for Marbella in local hospitals and medical centers, but they couldn't find her anywhere. Brenda and one of her friends decided to visit Marbella's house. They knocked on the door and rang the bell, but there was no answer. Normally, Marbella would leave a window slightly open for her friends to come and go. This time, the window was wide open. Brenda climbed in through the window and found the interior of the house looking as if Marbella had just come home from university. Her belongings, including books, clothes, bag, and car keys were all in their usual places. However, Marbella is missing. Throughout the day, they searched various locations but found nothing. According to Brenda, they went to the police to report Marbella missing. However, because Marbella was an adult, police regulations required waiting 3 days before launching an official search. Despite this, an investigation began right away. Brenda and her friends started making flyers with Marbella's photo. Marbella was described as a young girl with brown eyes, long straight chestnut red hair, dark skin, a slim build, a height of 1.50 meters, and a weight of 45 kilograms. They posted and distributed these flyers throughout the city. At the same time, William used his network of contacts to launch a search campaign for Marbella. Along with Brenda, they even attempted to hack into Marbella's phone to determine her location, but this was unsuccessful. In a later interview, Brenda mentioned that even Juan's behavior became more suspicious. 3 days after Marbella's disappearance, on February 8, the police received a call from a man who reported finding a woman's body in a dump in the Colonia Te Colet area. This location was over 26 miles from Marbella's house in southern Tijuana and was so remote. It took the police a long time to locate this site, but they eventually arrived. Among a pile of garbage, they discovered a large black bag containing the body of a young woman. She was dressed in blue pajamas with images of black puppies and animal print slippers. The body was almost face down, with the legs tied with a yellow cord and the hands tied behind the back with a pink scarf wrapped. The body was taken to the morgue for examination, while investigators collected evidence at the scene. After finding the body, police informed Brenda that the body's characteristics matched the description of Marbella. Brenda and William immediately went to the morgue, but were told they had to wait until the next day to examine the body. Juan unexpectedly appeared and helped them gain access to the morgue. Unfortunately, they determined that the body was that of Marbella. At that time, Juan did not know that Brenda and Marbella's friends had reported him to the police, as they suspected him of stalking Marbella. The police requested permission from Marbella's family to carry out a forensic examination and conduct other investigations to collect evidence. The examination of Marbella's remains took about 5 days. Mourning began on February 13, 2020, and continued until February 14. Juan attended the wake and funeral, he wearing a T-shirt with her image. This made her friends extremely angry. Despite their anger, they remained silent, follow the instructions of the authorities so that he does not become suspicious, as they feared he might escape before sufficient evidence was collected for his arrest. At Marbella's funeral, Jose Ruiz, a close friend of hers, spotted an individual with scratches on his neck. This man behaved strangely, repeatedly approaching the coffin, threatening people with a knife, and offered to carry flowers to the cemetery in his car. Meanwhile, police are still trying their best to investigate Marbella's death. Forensic results revealed that she died from asphyxia due to severe compression of her neck, which blocked her air supply. She also suffered serious blows to the abdomen, causing damage to her internal organs. In front of the University of Baja California, Marbella's classmates held a memorial in her memory. They emphasized that she was a victim of violence by men, a serious problem taking place across Mexico. The investigation into Marbella's killing included interviews with people who knew her. Through the interviews, it was learned that a few days before she was killed, she had spoken to Juan. He said that he was a federal police officer in Baja California and worked as a specialist at the Attorney General's office. However, it was discovered that he had only interned at the Attorney General's office. Additionally, some media outlets reported that he had a criminal record and was imprisoned for offenses related to illegal substances in the state of Sonora. The results of a search of Marbella's car were even more troubling, as experts found a hidden geolocation device. Later, A search of Juan's house uncovered several similar devices and satellite detection receivers. This explains why he always knows where she is. However, the most compelling evidence came from a forensic examination of the body, which revealed fingerprints and semen. DNA analysis confirmed that these matched the genetic sample taken from Juan when he was brought in for questioning. An analysis of Marbella's mobile phone showed that her phone and Juan's were always in the same locations during her disappearance. This shows that he used her phone to send messages to her friends. A few days after the funeral, Juan was charged with the murder of Marbella, and on February 22, 2020, he appeared in court for the first time. During this hearing, it was revealed that after her disappearance, he contacted the state attorney general's office several times to ask about the investigation's progress. He also expressed his wish that the person responsible for Marbella's death would not be punished. The authorities stated that Juan had always been the main suspect in the case, due to previous reported incidents of harassment. It was said that he was obsessed with Marbella, even though he had known her for only 5 months. Since then, he had been under police surveillance. According to the investigation, he allegedly entered her house and kidnapped her. The incident occurred between February 5 and 8 in the Sai Kotlef Aliman neighborhood, where Juan lived. There he kept she, exerting physical and sexual violence, which caused injuries to her face, stomach, and genitals, ultimately leading to her death. The conclusion in the case was that Marbella died of lack of oxygen, caused by compression of the neck, which blocked the airway and blood vessels. She also sustained severe bruising to her abdomen, causing damage to internal organs. Juan's DNA matched semen found in Marbella's body, and a considerable amount of tissue was found under her fingernails, indicating a struggle. During the hearing, mobile phone tracking data revealed that Juan and Marbella's phones were together starting from the morning of February 5. The body was discovered at Marbella's home. Another important clue is that their phones were also together on February 2. This was also the day Marbella reported her house and car keys missing. On February 27, at a hearing in the Superior Court of Tijuana, Judge Daniel Aguilar Patina concluded there is enough evidence to accuse Juan of killing Marbella. The judge highlighted that Juan deliberately misled everyone about Marbella's whereabouts, pretending to be worried in front of her family and at the gas station, while he actually knew what was going on. He was temporarily detained in MIAs, but maintained his innocence regarding. His trial occurred from September 14 to 29, 2022. Over 2 years after the incident, forensic evidence and testimony from people close to Marbella were presented. It was discovered that on the morning Marbella went missing, a colleague had called her, noting that she had not been to the gas station. She only managed to say she was unwell before the connection was broken. Her friends described her as a wonderful person and identified Juan as a harasser. She never believed she was in danger, so she didn't file an official complaint against Juan, she thinking he would lose interest after her repeated rejections. Other witnesses mentioned that he often pretended to be a law enforcement officer, but he was just an intern at the University of Justice. After reviewing all the evidence and listening to the testimonies, Judge Marta Elvia Luna Vargas declared that Juan committed the horrendous crime, he that took Marbella's life. She then sentenced Juan to 42 years and 6 months in prison for the murder of Marbella Valdez. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Mariana Jocelyn Baltira. Mariana Jocelyn Baltira was born on October 24, 2000, in Morelos, a city in the state of Mexico. She was the eldest of 2 children. Her mother, Syra, had a difficult time giving birth to she, as she was born much earlier than expected. At birth, she has very low weight, causing doctors to be concerned about her chances of survival, and they expressed this to her parents. Mariana spent her first 2 months in a hospital's special ward for premature infants. Her mother prayed constantly for her recovery, and prayers were answered. Her condition improved rapidly, she gained weight, and by New Year's 2001, she was discharged home. So, the girl's parents celebrated the holiday with their daughter. While she grew up slim and beautiful, her health remained fragile from an early age. When Mariana was 4 years old, her family welcomed a second child, a baby boy named Bernardo. She adored her younger brother and helped her parents care for him from an early age. The two sisters were extremely close and almost inseparable. At the age of 6, Mariana was diagnosed with epilepsy, which required her to take regular medication to reduce the chances of seizures. Thanks to effective treatment and regular supervision from experts, her condition was well managed, allowing her to live a relatively normal life, much like other children her age. She pays great attention to health care, always follows a routine and takes medicine on time. Mariana draws very well and loved music. She was kind, sincere, and open-hearted. Everyone who knew her spoke highly of her. Despite this, she was very modest and shy, especially during her teenage years. She had only a few close friends, rarely went on dates, avoided parties, and hardly interacted with boys. She preferred spending time at home with her family. Petite and delicate, she looks much younger than her actual age. Although she is 16, she is often mistaken for being 13. Her care and love for animals is demonstrated by her regular care of homeless animals. Feeding them, treating them, and finding them a safe home. While in high school, she dreamed of becoming a veterinarian to provide professional care to animals in need. Mariana's parents often described her as too naive and trusting. This made them worry that someone would take advantage of her innocence and harm her. The neighborhood where her family lived was generally peaceful, and most of the residents know each other. However, their street was lined with many shops employing migrant workers, often unofficially. Some of these workers even lived inside the shops because they lacked housing. Of course, among these workers there are those with criminal records. However, the shop owner sees no problem with these workers, as long as they perform their duties responsibly. About 50 meters from Mariana's house is a butcher shop where her parents often go to buy meat. The shop owner employed 4 workers, 2 locals who managed the sales and 2 outsiders who handled unloading, preparing the meat, and cleaning the shop. The outsiders lived in an attic on the shop's 2nd floor. As Mariana grew up, her parents occasionally asked her to do errands, such as buying meat at this butcher shop. There, she repeatedly encountered Juan Cruz Quintero Martinez, a handyman who lived on the 2nd floor. Just his appearance was enough to make her extremely scared. She often told her parents about this, describing his sinister gaze that made her blood run cold. However, he never approached or interacted with her, he only looked at her. Since there was no specific reason to accuse him, her parents decided it was best to not let her go to that store anymore. Instead, they began doing the shopping themselves. Then, one committed a minor theft, leading the store owner to fire him. From then on, no one heard from him for about a year. However, at the start of summer 2017, he showed up at the store again, asking his former employer for his job back. Surprisingly, he was rehired and moved back into the 2nd floor of the store. One day, Cyrus' niece was visiting their family. At that time, Mariana and her younger brother, Bernardo, were also at home because they have summer vacation. That morning, only Orlando, her father, had left the house around 9 a.m. Syra asked Mariana to go to the local supermarket to buy groceries for breakfast. Normally, she didn't let Mariana go out alone, but she thought her daughter was old enough to handle the task quickly and safely. It was bright outside, the streets were busy, and she believed nothing bad could possibly happen. Syra gave Mariana some money and asked her to buy milk, eggs, and vegetables. When little girl left the house, she wore an old t-shirt and pajama pants. The store was less than a few hundred meters away, so the trip to buy the groceries and return home in no more than 30 minutes. However, when an hour passed and little girl still hadn't returned, Syra became worried. She had left her phone at home, so Syra, holding her little niece in her arms, went out to search for her daughter. Syra walked to the store and asked the cashiers if they had seen Mariana, a young girl wearing glasses. They told Cyrus that the girl had been there, bought the groceries a couple of hours ago, and left. At that moment, Syra began to realize that something terrible had happened to her daughter. She hurried back home, asked Bernardo to watch over her niece, and went out again to continue the search. Syra began asking neighbors, street vendors, and passers-by if they had seen Mariana. However, the little girl seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Immediately after that, Syra immediately contacted the police and called her husband, Orlando. He took a break from work and rushed home to help search for Mariana. By the time the police arrived, dozens of neighbors, along with relatives and friends of the Baltira family, joined the search for Mariana. They distributed flyers with her picture. Initially, police asked the parents if their daughter might have gone on a date, met a friend, or visited someone. Her parents firmly denied these theories, insisting that she would never leave without informing them, especially since she had gone to the store in home clothes and carry a grocery bag. The area where Mariana disappeared had surveillance cameras, but almost none of them were functioning. Despite searching all day, no clues or traces of little girl were found. As night fell, the initial anxiety and panic turned into despair. The parents began to fear the worst, that their daughter would no longer live. On July 28, around 8 a.m., Mariana's parents received a call from a relative who lived nearby. The relative informed them that several police cars had arrived at the butcher's shop. Then, they quickly got ready and went to the scene. However, the police did not allow them inside, claiming that the situation had nothing to do with their daughter. Despite this, they were still resolutely not to leave. A few minutes later, after inspecting the premises, police officers approached Mariana's father, Orlando, and informed him that the body of a young girl, matching the description of Mariana, had been found on the second floor of the building. The body was lifeless and severely mutilated. Orlando was asked to come inside for identification, but the officers strongly advised against it, warning that the scene was extremely gruesome. When Orlando entered and saw the body of his beloved daughter lying in a pool of blood, he felt like the whole world had collapsed. He was at a loss as to how to break the sad news to his wife, who was waiting outside. The cause of death was determined to be massive blood loss from a deep wound to the stomach. It was later discovered that the criminal had cut out the girl's stomach while she was still alive and left her to bleed to death. Experts concluded that Mariana died in the early hours of July 28, just hours before her body was discovered. This meant she had been alive for nearly 24 hours after her disappearance. During that time, the murderer continuously tortured the girl. Then he caused the wound that caused her death. The murder weapon was identified as a butcher knife, which was found on the floor near her body. The store owner discovered the horrific incident when he came to work in the morning. According to the butcher shop owner, every last Thursday of the month, the shop closes for cleaning. On this day, the owner focused on organizational tasks, held meetings with suppliers, and submitted reports to the tax inspectorate. Meanwhile, the employees disinfected and cleaned the premises. On Thursday morning, July 27, 2017, when the owner arrived at the store, he immediately noticed bloodstains on the floor. At first, he thought one of his employees who lived on the second floor might have been injured. However, upon going upstairs, He was stunned to see his employees' belongings covered in blood, as well as a knife and the body of a young girl in a pool of blood. Additionally, a significant amount of money was missing from the cash register, which the criminal had likely taken in fleeing the scene. 2 employees who lived and worked at the store immediately became suspects. However, an hour later, one of them arrived at the store, just as shocked as everyone by what had happened. He said that the day before, he was busy so he had to go back to his hometown, and the other employee agreed to cover his shift. The police determined his account to be truthful, as there was no evidence placing him at the crime scene. As a result, he was removed from the list of suspects. By that time, investigators had obtained CCTV footage from the supermarket where Mariana was shopping on the last day of her life. The footage showed little girl entering the store, followed a few minutes later by Juan Martinez, the butcher. His behavior was unsettling. He appeared to stalk her, like a predator tracking its prey. Without purchasing anything, he left the supermarket shortly after she. After that, both of them vanished. Although there were street cameras in the area, they were not functioning. Additionally, none of the many passers-by or street vendors reported seeing anything unusual. Mariana's parents were adamant that their daughter would never willingly leave with Juan, regardless of what he might have said or done to persuade her. They believe he must have forced the girl into the butcher shop. However, this raised a question: why hadn't little girl screamed or called for help? Once again, no witnesses noticed anything out of the ordinary. In 2015, Juan came under police scrutiny for harassment and causing serious bodily harm. He had started working as an assistant in a butcher's shop earlier that year. According to the shop owner, he was diligent and raised no concerns for a long time. However, in mid-2016, he was caught stealing money and was fired. After losing his job, he moved back to the suburbs to live with his parents. There, he lived with his old and weak mother and his sister, who was her primary caregiver. Juan took advantage of his family, stealing money and belongings from the house. He abusing alcohol and illegal drugs. He frequently physically assaulted his mother and sister. Eventually, his sister, fed up with his abusive behavior, threatened to report him to the police. Because he was afraid of being arrested by the police, he decided to leave home. He went to his old employer, the owner of a butcher shop, and asked to be rehired. The owner agreed, giving him both a job and allowed him to live on the second floor of the store. This happened in mid-June, about a month before a tragic incident unfolded. At first, Juan performed his work diligently. However, about a week later, he meets Mariana, who has changed and matured over the past year. While little girl avoided any interaction with him and never shopped at the butcher shop, he began stalking her, following her through the streets and observing her daily routes. Another butcher, the who lives with Juan on the second floor, noticed his obsession with Mariana. Little did he know that Juan would soon commit a horrific crime. After Juan was identified as the sole suspect in the rape and murder of Mariana, all available resources were mobilized to find him. The police initially focused on his home, suspecting that his relatives might help him evade capture. However, his sister insisted that he was not welcome there and explained that he knew his family would immediately turn him in to the authorities. She showed no surprise over the horrific crime he had committed. In fact, she revealed that he had previously raped their elderly mother and even attacked her with a knife, threatening to cut her open like a pig if she didn't give him money for drugs. Finding Juan was a top priority for the police because he was highly aggressive, cruel, and a serious threat to others. The money he stole from the cash register could have lasted him a long time, but no one knew what he might do next. Will he reoffend after killing Mariana? For an entire month, the police searched the Morelos area and nearby suburbs, believing he couldn't have gone far. However, over time, they still could not find he. Information about Mariana's murder quickly spread nationwide through the media, causing police forces across the country to simultaneously hunt for the cruel murderer. Juan's photograph was broadcast daily on television, printed on the front pages of newspapers, and plastered on streets nationwide with the label "Ruthless Killer" at large. A substantial bounty was offered for any information about his location or help in capturing him, and the reward amount kept increasing. Yet, despite these efforts, the case made no progress. The search for Juan was very difficult. He had no contact with his family, no friends, no social media accounts, no mobile phone, and he didn't use credit cards. After 6 months of trying to locate him without any success, the reward for information about him was raised to about $250,000. Even so, there were no leads. Juan was finally captured in August 2019, 2 years after Mariana's murder. He was found nearly 1,000 kilometers away from the crime scene. In another state, thanks to an elderly woman who recognized him on the street. She noticed his suspicious behavior, as he constantly hid his face with a hood and sunglasses, and reported him to the police. She unaware that he was one of the most wanted criminals in Mexico. Juan was arrested right on the street, and to the surprise of the authorities, he did not resist. He calmly extended his hands, allowing officers to put handcuffs on him. The next day, after confirming his identity, the authorities transported him to Morelos, where the crime took place. He was placed in custody in a local prison while awaiting trial. In May 2022, 5 years after the tragic incident, the court sentenced Juan Cruz Quintero Martinez, who committed the murder and rape, to life in prison without parole. He must also pay approximately $49,000 in compensation for the damages he caused to Mariana's family. Mariana's parents and younger brother expressed that the arrest of her killer brought them great relief, as it ensured he could no longer harm other girls. However, they also acknowledged that no punishment, not even life imprisonment or restitution, could ease the pain in their hearts. Their beloved daughter and older sister was gone, and they would have to carry this sorrow for the rest of their lives. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Laura Conley. Laura Conley was born on March 15, 1978, in the United States as the third child of Carlene and James Conley. She grew up happily with her sisters, enjoying a loving and caring family environment. However, everything changed when Carlene and James divorced. At that time, Laura was a teenager and deeply affected by her parents' separation. Struggling with her emotions, she turned to alcohol for comfort, which eventually led to an addiction to psychotropic substances. Her mother believes Laura's addiction stems from the failure of their marriage. Carlene was born on June 13, 1945, in Virginia. Her 3 daughters were her top priority. Carlene blamed herself for the impact the divorce had on her youngest daughter, Laura. Carlene was always understanding and helpful to Laura, especially during difficult times. Family members and close friends often noted Laura's irritable behavior, while Carlene's other daughters married and became independent. Laura continued to live in the family home in Kentucky. She was unemployed and required constant care. Laura believed she was mentally ill and frequently sought medical help for her medications. However, there came a point when her health care providers stopped prescribing her these medications. Desperate to get her medications, Laura began breaking into neighbors' homes to steal any pills she could find. Laura often took advantage of her mother's kindness, constantly calling her at work and causing disruptions that forced Carlene to quit her job. In 2008, Laura was convicted of petty theft, but she was quickly released because her mother posted bail. Unfortunately, the situation got worse. Laura not only verbally abused her mother, but also physically abused her. Although Laura physically harmed Carlene on several occasions, Carlene still did not report her daughter or ask her to leave the house. When an incident occurred, Laura needed a mental health evaluation, but Carlene still welcomed her daughter back home, feeling obligated to take care of Laura. It is common for parents who have experienced violence from their children to hesitate in reporting the incidents. They often fear that doing so may harm their relationship with their child. However, this reluctance can endanger their own safety. Lara's violent behavior was not only directed at her mother, it also extended to her boyfriend, Chris Lewin. Lara faced legal consequences for her actions against him on 2 separate occasions. One notable incident occurred in late October 2014. Lara woke Chris while he was asleep and accused him of cheating, leading to an argument that turned physical. During the confrontation, Lara not only bit Chris but also used a kitchen knife to lightly cut his hand. As a result of the incident, Lara was given a light sentence in order to attend anger management therapy. However, court records indicate that there is no evidence that she continued to participate in the program. At age 35, Lara continued her behavior. On January 7, 2015, she was arrested again for biting her boyfriend's finger when he intervened to stop her from attacking Carlene. He could not understand why Lara was so deeply hostile towards her mother. Carlene had always been a caring, devoted mother to her 3 daughters and proud of her 5 grandchildren. She worked hard to support Lara and give her the help she needed to overcome her difficulties. Unfortunately, despite Carlene's unconditional love and good intentions, Lara began to abuse her mother over time. 5. Lara called 911 to report an incident at her home. She informed police that a home invasion had occurred, resulting in her mother being shot to death. Officers from the Independence, Taylor Mill, and Covington police departments quickly arrived at the scene. They witnessed a horrific scene, Lara covered in blood, and her mother, 69-year-old Carlene Conley, lying on the kitchen counter with multiple stab wounds and in critical condition. When police asked Lara what had happened, she claimed she did not remember because she had been unconscious. She mentioned that about 2 hours before the incident, several people had knocked on her door asking for candy, which was common on Halloween, even though the holiday was still far away. She provided police with a description of the suspect, which led to a search of the area. However, police were unable to find anyone matching Lara's description. To continue the investigation, police took Lara to the police station for questioning. After arriving at the police station, Lara provided additional details. She mentioned that she was being pursued for money owed to drug dealers. Additionally, Lara gave police inconsistent accounts of how she found her mother's body. Initially, she said that she found Carlene dead when she returned home. However, in the same conversation, she later said that after waking up in the basement, she went upstairs and found her mother dead on the kitchen floor. However, police Mike Richman and Jim Moore quickly connected Lara to the crime within hours of starting their investigation. It became clear that she had lied to the police about what happened. The evidence showed that there had been no break-in, no fingerprints were found on the doors or windows to suggest that anyone else had been there. This led to the conclusion that Lara was the only person in the house when Carlene was murdered. Therefore, in the early morning of Sunday, March 15th, while Lara was celebrating her 37th birthday, the police arrested her for Carlene's murder. The next day, Monday, March 16th, Lara appeared before the judge via video link and stated that she pleaded not guilty. Police later booked her into the county jail without bail on charges of murder and domestic violence. She was also ordered not to contact her boyfriend. Prosecutor Rob Sanders said Carlene's murder would have a significant impact on the community, which is typically quiet and has a low crime rate. The medical examiner's report found that the attack on Carlene was severe, with an autopsy showing she had been stabbed 77 times. with 27 stab wounds and 2 bite wounds. On March 24, Lara appeared in court and told the judge that she had no money, assets, or property, so she could not afford an attorney. The judge appointed a public defender for her and the hearing began. During the court proceedings, Officer Michael confirmed that Lara had opened the door to the police and that she was the only person in the house other than Carlene. He described finding Carlene on the kitchen floor, surrounded by several knives. He also noted that Lara was covered in blood, with her shirt, arms, legs, face, lips, and nose all covered in blood. After hearing the police testimony, the judge sent the case to the jury, who convicted Lara Conley of murder on April 16, 2015. Lara's trial began on January 3, 2017, nearly a year and 9 months after the crime. The jury heard testimony from about 30 witnesses. The prosecution presented evidence from police officers involved in the investigation and from Carlene's family. In contrast, the defense argued that Lara acted in self-defense due to severe emotional distress. The defense claimed that the knife attack was in response to an attack by her mother. When Lara took the stand, she explained to the jury that she and her mother had argued about her birthday celebration. During the argument, her mother hit her on the head with a heavy object. Lara testified that she could not remember anything that happened after that, including how she got injured or her 911 call. The jury learned that a physical examination of Lara after the crime revealed she had cuts on her head and back, bruises on her body, and a hematoma under her eye. On March 23, 2017, the parties presented their closing arguments. Assistant District Attorney Lawrence summarized the evidence and highlighted the many conflicting and unconfirmed accounts that Lara presented. Later that day, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lara Conley guilty of first-degree murder and recommended a 27-year prison sentence. Lara's legal team filed for a retrial, claiming that her sentence was unfair. The lawyers argued that Lara was dealing with mental health issues, including bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. In their appeal, the defense emphasized that Lara had consumed large amounts of alcohol and a drug intended to cause drowsiness shortly before the incident. However, the judge rejected the appeal and ordered a psychological evaluation by court-appointed experts. The defense argued for the cancellation of the preliminary trial and requested a new trial, claiming that the initial trial was flawed, leading to Lara's guilty verdict. The prosecutor was allowed to use evidence from a prior assault committed by Lara. In June 2019, the Kent Supreme Court ruled that the trial court had made a mistake, which led to the overturning of Lara's 27-year prison sentence for her mother's murder and ordered a new trial. However, instead of going through a retrial, Lara opted to accept a plea agreement, which reduced her sentence to 20 years. As a result, she will be eligible for parole in 2032. Currently, Lara is incarcerated at the Women's Correctional Facility in Kent, where she is serving her sentence. Lara killed her own mother and displayed no remorse, leaving unresolved questions about her motives. Additionally, in just 10 years, Lara could be released. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sarah Ludeman. Sarah Ludeman was born on December 7, 1990 in the United States. Her father, Charles, was a taxi driver, and her mother, Gay, was a surgeon. Although they were originally from New York, they moved to Florida in search of a better living environment. During her school years, Sarah faced ridicule from her classmates because of her weight, which had a significant impact on her psychological well-being. To cope with this, she turned to her father for support. From then on, she became very close to her father. She often sat next to him in a taxi, turned on the radio at high volume and sang along to country songs. Charles introduced her to new lessons, games, and concerts. Over time, Sarah became more confident, and during her high school years at Johns Hopkins in St. Petersburg, she made many friends. She graduated with excellent grades, and many teachers recognized her potential, predicting a bright future for her. Sarah was a bright and talented young woman who excelled in her studies and aspired to be a veterinarian. Her parents, Charles and Gay, were proud of her career choice as it reflected her deep kindness and compassion. While many of her friends were starting to date, Sarah found herself attracted only to unattainable figures, like famous musicians and athletes. By the age of 16, Sarah was content living her own life without the desire for romantic relationships. Very close to her, although they never met, was another girl her age named Rachel Wade. Rachel was born on February 27, 1990. Her family was a typical American middle-class family. Her mother worked as a teacher's assistant at an elementary school, and her father was a truck driver. Rachel was a quiet child who loved to play and have fun. Everything changed for Rachel when she entered her teenage years. At 15, she became withdrawn, moody, and frequently argued with her parents, particularly her mother. Misunderstandings arose for various reasons, such as Rachel's refusal to help with household chores or disagreements about her friends. When she was unhappy with something, she would run away. At first, her parents, Barry and Janet, searched for her on their own, but when Rachel began to disappear more frequently, they felt compelled to call in the police. They soon realized that Rachel's main problem was her desire to impress boys. She became obsessed with them, and when a boy showed interest in her, she would focus on him and ignore everything else. Rachel fell into a cycle of moving from one relationship to another. By the time she turned 17, her parents had lost all patience. They were exhausted from searching for her and trying to convince her to come home. Rachel became increasingly difficult to handle, even resorting to violence against her parents. During her last attempt to leave, she was open about her plans. She told Barry and Janet that she intended to move in with a guy named Javier Loboy. At that point, she was just a month away from her 17th birthday. Rachel's relationship with Javier ended abruptly. As expected, the police were called to their apartment several times due to arguments. When they broke up, Rachel wasn't too upset. She quickly found comfort with another friend of Javier's, Joshua Camacho. Joshua, with sharp facial features, curly black hair, and golden skin that captivated her. He was physically strong and had a way with words. After high school, he didn't pursue further education and instead took on odd jobs. He enjoyed taking selfies, posing with a gun, or showing off a tattoo. Joshua often relied on the girls for support and rarely accomplished anything on his own. Erin Slow Tower, Joshua's ex-lover, became pregnant and gave birth to a child. Joshua took no responsibility for his daughter and did not pay any child support. Instead, he continued to live a carefree life in his parents' house, with no plans for the future. Joshua had a knack for attracting new girls. However, he was very controlling and even argued with his girlfriend. Joshua dropped out of school and worked as a waiter, which helped him pay for his apartment. From the beginning, he tried to assert his dominance over Rachel, controlling her every move. Later they broke up several times, but each breakup only made Rachel love him more, and she was always the first to come back. One day, Sarah Ludeman visited the restaurant where Joshua worked, and her life changed forever. She fell in love with him at first sight. Joshua made Sarah feel extremely special. Soon, Sarah mustered up the courage and told her parents about her feelings. However, Charles and Gay doubted the sincerity of Joshua, who clearly loved no one but himself and only met gullible and naive girls who could easily believe his charming words. Her parents decided to be patient, hoping that the relationship would eventually end on its own. However, this did not happen. The teenage love story continued to develop. It got to the point where Sarah transferred to another school to be closer to Joshua. Although her parents disapproved of this decision, they held on to the hope that their daughter would eventually realize the truth and that things would return to normal. During the first 6 months of their relationship, Joshua and Sarah frequently argued in public, often so violently that the police were called. One day, Sarah got into a fight with Erin, the mother of Joshua's daughter. During the argument, Joshua became angry and punched Sarah in the face, but she did not press charges. It's unclear how he managed to manipulate all 3 women, but it seems the 3 girls' different schedules made it easier for Joshua to deceive. Sarah had to be home by 11 p.m. at the request of her parents, while Erin worked 2 jobs and was only free at night. Despite her jealousy and sometimes finding Joshua with other women, Erin always returned to him. Rachel, on the other hand, had a busy job but had her own apartment, where Joshua would sometimes stay. When Sarah and Rachel discover each other, instead of facing Joshua together, they focus on competing for his affection. Their rivalry takes place primarily online through text messages and social media. Both girls are certain that they will win Joshua's heart, believing that he will eventually choose one of them. This leads to incidents such as slashed tires, broken mirrors, and street arguments. Their behavior worries their parents, who feel helpless and unsure of how to intervene. Conflict between Sarah and Rachel escalated from simple online arguments and minor issues to serious threats of violence. After Joshua and Sarah's trip to New York, Sarah posted photos of them together on MySpace, which greatly angered Rachel. On August 29, 2008, Rachel left an angry voice message for Sarah, threatening her life. In her message, Rachel not only expressed her anger, but also bragged about how financially independent and attractive she was. Sarah later saved these messages, possibly out of fear for her safety. Rachel had been texting Sarah all morning, bragging about her relationship with Joshua. Sarah's best friend Ashley had been encouraging her to get over Joshua for the past few months, reminding her that she deserved better, but Sarah never took her advice. During lunch, while the other students were in the cafeteria, Sarah cried in Ashley's arms. Ashley tried to cheer her up by suggesting that they go to the mall or the movies after school, but Sarah refused, insisting that she needed to talk to Joshua. Her situation worsened when she went to Rachel's MySpace page and saw a post in which Rachel expressed her love for Joshua. Although Rachel did not mention him by name, Sarah immediately realized who she was referring to. Frustrated, Sarah sent Joshua several text messages but received no response. She then accused him of ignoring her. Joshua eventually responded but tried to change the subject away from Rachel. After a few messages, Sarah rushed to see him. Meanwhile, Rachel, who had the day off from work, offered to spend time with Joshua, but he refused, saying that he needed to take care of his sister's children. Not believing his excuses, Rachel decides to go to his sister Janet's house to confirm if Joshua is lying. Before leaving, she puts a knife in her pocket. When she arrives, Rachel finds Sarah, Joshua, Janet, and another girl, Gilly, there. Rachel became upset when she saw Sarah's car parked near the house. The girls noticed Rachel passing by the house several times. Rachel then texted Joshua, asking why he was with other women. He responded by telling her to go home, saying that he didn't like her anymore. However, he only said this to reassure Sarah, as he was actually planning on seeing Rachel later. It was almost 11 o'clock, and Sarah knew she needed to go home, but she couldn't bring herself to leave, because Rachel had come downstairs and texted her, wanting to talk. Joshua and Sarah decided it was best to stay in the house and wait for Rachel to leave. Sarah texted her parents to let them know she would be home late and came up with an excuse to avoid explaining Rachel's obsessive behavior. After midnight, Sarah prepared to go home because Rachel was no longer outside. Meanwhile, Janet and Gilly had asked for a ride to McDonald's, and Sarah felt safer going with them. Rachel went to visit her ex-boyfriend Javier. Meanwhile, Ashley, a friend of Sarah's, learned of Rachel's location and quickly informed Sarah. Without hesitation, Sarah, Janet, and Gilly went to where Rachel was. At that moment, Rachel began sending threatening messages, claiming that she would kill both Sarah and Joshua. She was standing on the street when Sarah's car slowed down nearby. Sarah, Janet, and Gilly got out of the car and ran towards Rachel. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Rachel pulled a knife from her pocket and attacked Sarah, stabbing her twice in the chest. Sarah collapsed, bleeding from a severe wound. Despite her condition, she managed to contact Joshua and explain what had happened. Joshua quickly rushed to Sarah's house to inform her parents. When Charles heard about the tragedy, he rushed to the scene. Meanwhile, Rachel's ex-lover Javier was on the phone with an emergency worker and tried to tear his shirt to stop Sarah's bleeding. Rachel went to a bench, sat down, and threw the knife away. Sarah was taken to the hospital. An hour later, at approximately 3 a.m. on April 15, 2009, Sarah died. The investigation was quick. Joshua and several witnesses testified that Rachel attacked Sarah with a knife. When questioned about why she brought a weapon, Rachel claimed it was for self-defense. At that time, she was unaware of the severity of the wounds she had inflicted on Sarah. The officers asked if Sarah was armed, and Rachel answered no. She maintained that she had not meant to harm Sarah and was actually trying to escape from her. After a lengthy interrogation, the police informed Rachel that Sarah had died from her injuries. This news caused Rachel to faint. Police used witness testimonies to piece together what happened. Consequently, Rachel was officially charged with second-degree murder and taken to the county jail with a bond set at $500,000. Despite this serious situation, Rachel did not fully grasp the gravity of her circumstances. This was evident in her phone conversations with friends and family, where she frequently discussed her plans for life after her release, firmly believing that the jury would support her. The trial started on July 20, 2010. The prosecution argued that the intense and hostile dynamics within the love triangle were the motive for Sarah's murder. They highlighted that Rachel had been threatening Sarah on social media prior to the crime, claiming that Rachel's attack was so brutal that the knife blade was bent during the assault. The defense pointed out that Sarah was physically larger than Rachel, emphasizing that Rachel acted in self-defense in a dangerous situation where there were multiple girls present. Witnesses from that night, Janet, Gilly, gave their accounts. Janet and Gilly confirmed that they heard Rachel threaten to kill both Sarah and Joshua. Prosecutors presented a recording of the 911 call from that night. In addition, recordings from 2008 and text messages saved by Sarah were introduced into evidence and played a key role in determining the outcome of the case. The jury, which reached its verdict in just 2 hours, found 20-year-old Rachel Wade guilty of second-degree murder. During her trial, she received a 27-year prison sentence, with the possibility of parole after 20 years for good behavior. Rachel was then sent to a women's correctional facility to serve her sentence. Joshua, who was in Florida, left the state. Some believe he went to New York to visit relatives and avoid media scrutiny, while others think he returned to Florida to reconcile with Aaron. In 2011, Rachel, who was in prison, agreed to an interview. She expressed remorse for the events that occurred and wished she could go back in time and make different choices. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Hannah Graham. Hannah Graham, grew up in a loving family that appreciated the little joys of life. Hannah was smart, healthy, and musically gifted. She was a vibrant young woman until she met Jesse Matthew, and her vibrant life took a dark turn. In every photo, from childhood to adolescence, Hannah is smiling. Those who knew her knew of Hannah's great ambition and ambition. Tragically, it seems her bright future was cut short by an unexpected evil that could devastate a life in an instant. On September 12, 2014, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Hannah left her home in Grand Marquette to meet friends. By 10 p.m., they went to FIC restaurant in Charlotte-Sweely. After spending some time together, Hannah later went to a party at the Caden Plaza Apartments on Tina Street. During the party, she told her friends that she was feeling unwell and wanted to leave. One friend offered to walk her home, but Hannah declined, as she lived only a few minutes away from Caden Plaza. Around midnight, Hannah said goodbye to her friends, but instead of going home, she walked in the opposite direction toward the Tempo restaurant. Security cameras on the buildings along her route captured footage of her as she headed to the shopping center on Charlotte Street, where Tempo was located. It was already September 13th, and at 12:56 a.m., the Hannah sent a message to a friend saying she was lost and not feeling well. At that time, Hannah was believed to be very drunk. It was unclear whether she had wandered into a different part of town by accident or due to her intoxication. Meanwhile, 32-year-old Jesse Matthew, a taxi driver, stopped at the Lazy Parrot for a drink. Afterward, he visited several other bars in the city center, where he harassed women. The women later reported that Jesse's behavior was inappropriate and crossed boundaries. Jesse eventually spotted Hannah. He initially walked past her, but then realized this was a great opportunity and decided to turn around and follow her. Surveillance footage captured Hannah wandering the streets, seemingly confused about her surroundings and the time. Jesse approached her, hugged her, and they headed to the Tempo restaurant. Inside, he bought 2 drinks. Witnesses later gave conflicting accounts. Some claimed Hannah was inside the bar area, while others claimed she was outside at a table. There was also no clear evidence that she was served a drink. Hannah's final text message to her friend, saying she was stuck, was sent in the middle of the night, but the meaning behind her words remains unclear. On September 14th, when Hannah's family could not reach her, they became alarmed and reported her missing to the police. Hannah was a person who always notified her family before going out. She was never away for long and always answered the phone. As time went on, her family's worries grew. Meanwhile, the police began searching for Hannah, with state and federal police joining the effort. Hannah's disappearance caused considerable concern in Charlotte-Sweely and the Albert Mall area, especially since there had been previous cases of missing women. Hannah's case quickly attracted public attention and the search for her intensified. Through a detailed investigation and the collection of video footage from numerous city cameras, police were able to piece together a timeline of the events of that tragic night. Hundreds of people gathered at the University of Virginia to support Hannah's family. Many volunteers joined the search, doing everything they could to help Hannah return safely. Hannah had helped others in need, and now it was their turn to help her. Jesse Matthew grew up in a low-income family. He faced constant bullying and humiliation at school, which led to a stutter and difficulties in his studies. Despite these challenges, he persevered and continued his education, eventually earning a full football scholarship to Liberty University in 2002. However, he was soon accused of violence against another student, prompting him to transfer to a different school. Upon entering Christopher Newport University, Jesse could no longer contain his desire, and soon rumors began to spread of a new sexual assault committed by Jesse. The victims remained unknown, having dropped out of school. Jesse made a living by working odd jobs for a while, switching jobs from time to time. In 2005, a young woman was attacked and raped in the Fairfax district while walking home from the store. The attacker threatened to kill her if she resisted. Although she survived the ordeal, she was hospitalized and treated, which included procedures to collect DNA samples. Police gathered evidence from the crime scene to create a DNA profile, but it did not match any suspects in police databases. Due to her fear for her safety, the woman ultimately chose to return to her home country of India. Surprisingly, family and friends described Jesse as a kind and helpful person. Even his ex-girlfriends found him charming and gentle. In fact, Jesse faced multiple sexual assault charges. One of the police officers who was friends with Jesse said that he had a very difficult childhood and was abused during his school years. Jesse was bullied a lot and forced to keep things a secret. Although this was never fully confirmed by his family or friends, Jesse himself stated that he was abused in his early years. This may explain how he went from being a good person to someone with malicious intent. Jesse's father struggled with alcoholism and was often absent from home for long periods of time. In 2006, his father was arrested for breaking the law. Did these experiences shape Jesse's personality and lead him to become a serial killer? On September 19, police obtained a search warrant for Jesse's apartment. They seized a mobile phone without a SIM card and a pair of men's shorts. DNA tests revealed both Jesse's and Hannah's biological material on these items. A second search warrant was executed for his apartment. And the next day, police announced that while he had not yet been formally charged with Hannah's kidnapping, he was the last person seen with her on the night she disappeared. During this second search, several bags of evidence were collected, including a phone, laundry, bedding, a pillow, clothing, a toothbrush, test tubes of hair, a wallet, and a cigar butt. Police obtained a third search warrant, allowing them to collect a pair of white shorts, a maroon shirt, and a towel with a reddish-brown stain. They also seized an orange Chevrolet Suburban belonging to Jesse. On September 20th, Jesse arrived at the Charlotte police station with Will, requesting an attorney and refusing to answer any questions about Hannah. Afterward, he left the station, got into his car, and sped away. Police pursued him, but he managed to evade capture. A nationwide search for him was initiated. It was later revealed that Jesse had obtained a new driver's license and withdrawn most of his bank funds. Jesse's family has urged him to share any information he has about Hannah with the police. His aunt, Alice Fletcher, has pledged to support Hannah's parents. Many people in Charlotte have joined the search efforts. Additionally, Hannah's college friends have provided significant support to the family. On September 24th, Jesse was seen on a beach in Texas. Since his car had been confiscated, he was living in a tent there. A bystander recognized him from a news report and called 911. Jesse was arrested and identified as a suspect in the kidnapping of Hannah. A $100,000 reward was offered for information about Hannah's location. He was taken to the Charlotte Regional Jail and held without bail while the search for Hannah continued. On October 18th, a body was discovered on a plot of land on Old Lynch Road in Albemarle County. The site was located behind an abandoned house and surrounded by brush. Police cordoned off the crime scene after the discovery of the body. The sheriff noted that further testing was needed to confirm the identity and expressed gratitude to those searching. A crop top and jeans matching those worn by Hannah were found nearby. A wristwatch was also found, but no underwear, shoes, or cell phone were found. A local resident informed police that on the morning of September 13th, he noticed Jesse's car parked on the road behind the house. The car doors were closed, and there was no one inside. It was determined that Jesse was familiar with the area, having worked as a taxi driver nearby for several years. The body was sent to Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Kevin Y. for examination. He conducted an autopsy and concluded that the death resulted from intentional violence, with strangulation being the likely cause. Further tests showed broken noses, and the examiner confirmed that the victim was Hannah Graham. DNA evidence was collected, allowing police to link Jesse to Hannah's murder. Police then also connected him to another crime. This was the January 2010 kidnapping of Morgan Harrington. Her body was discovered on a farm in Albemarle County by the farm owner, who initially mistook them for animal bones. When he realized they were human bones, he quickly contacted the police. Morgan's body and Hannah's body were found just 6 miles apart. The DNA from Morgan's shirt matched that of Jesse Matthew, and surprisingly, it also matched evidence collected in 2005 in Fairfax. On February 10, 2015, Jesse Matthew was formally charged with the murder of Hannah Graham. He faced charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Prosecutors sought the death penalty. Attorneys proposed a plea deal that would have reduced his sentence if he confessed to the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington. The victims' families met to discuss the deal, but when they learned that it only carried a 25-year sentence for murder, they rejected it. On March 2, 2016, Jesse Matthew accepted a plea deal in which he confessed to the murders of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. In exchange, the death penalty was removed. Jesse's family had hoped Judge Chad would take into account his troubled upbringing and the sexual abuse he had endured. Despite this, the judge found Jesse Matthew guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Jesse's trial lasted less than 3 days. Along with the charges previously mentioned, he was charged with assaulting and raping a girl in Fairfax County in 2005. Jesse Matthew was sentenced to 3 life terms in the Fairfax girl case. As the judge read out his sentence, he emphasized the violent nature of Jesse's attacks. After the verdict, Jesse's mother screamed and had to leave the courtroom. Throughout the trial and sentencing, Jesse remained silent. In December 2020, Jesse was taken from Sac State Prison to Richmond Hospital under police escort, where he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. The terrible crimes he committed had already been resolved, and by December 2022, Jesse Matthew was still alive, with no additional updates on his health at that time. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Courtney Schulhoff. Courtney Schulhoff was born in 1987 in Florida to Stephen and Tracy. While details about her childhood are limited, we do know that her parents divorced when she was young, which was a challenging experience for her. After the divorce, her mother moved out and Courtney stayed with her father. Eventually, Stephen faced significant financial problems, which led to their move. In 2003, Courtney attended Lyman High School. She was a hard-working student at first, but after her parents divorced, her grades began to drop rapidly. She rarely attended school, stopped trying, and became a poor student. Outside of school, Courtney's personality also changed. She began hanging out with a group of friends who were known for bad behavior, which negatively affected her. Tensions between Courtney and her father Stephen escalate, forcing her to temporarily move in with her mother Tracy. However, this arrangement does not last long. Tracy cannot accept the changes in Courtney, so Stephen has no choice but to welcome her back home. Once again, Courtney and her father face unresolved issues, including her difficulties with school. During this time, Courtney and her friends often gather at the racetrack across from her school, where she meets and begins dating a 20-year-old college student named Michael. Michael Morin was a former high school football player who, unlike Courtney, had performed well academically. He received straight A's and was now attending a nearby college. His parents had high expectations for him, but everything changed after he met Courtney. After a few weeks of talking, they began spending all their free time together. Courtney's father, Stephen, was extremely upset about her poor grades, and this only intensified when he learned about her decision to be with Michael. He quickly started blaming Michael for this choice. Their relationship was already strained, and this situation made it worse. Courtney felt that her father didn't want her to be happy. She tried to explain that Michael was a good person, but Stephen refused to see him in that way. He had heard rumors about Michael being involved in car theft and wanted to caution Courtney that no matter what Michael did, he would never earn her father's approval. After a series of arguments, Courtney began to accuse her father of being abusive, and there was some evidence to support her accusations. One day, when Courtney invited some friends over, including Michael, her father Stephen came home earlier than expected, leading to an altercation. While Courtney and her friends were drinking and smoking, Stephen suddenly entered the room. Enraged, he yelled at his daughter for throwing a party without his permission. After a brief argument, Stephen punched Courtney in the face in front of her friends. The situation between Courtney and her father, Stephen, remained tense. Although Courtney had stopped going to school, she refused to find a job and frequently used her father's credit card without asking. She would come home with new clothes and items purchased online. By this time, Stephen's financial situation had worsened, making things even more challenging. For several months, Courtney continued her troubling behavior, often sneaking Michael into their home at night while her father was asleep. Eventually, Stephen prohibited Courtney from seeing her boyfriend, but she ignored his wishes and invited Michael over whenever she pleased. Every conversation between Courtney and her father focused on his harsh criticism of Michael. As the months passed, the situation became increasingly difficult. One day, Stephen checked his bank account and noticed some money missing. He called the police, reporting his daughter to them, apparently to teach her a lesson. After speaking with the police, Courtney returned home, now much more afraid of her father. She began to see him as strict, unkind, and a real threat. She devised a plan, determined to break free from Stephen's control. By the end of 2003, Stephen was in a relationship with a woman named Elaine. During this same time, Courtney was working towards earning her high school diploma while continuing to date Michael. Frustrated by Courtney's father's efforts to control their relationship, the couple decided to run away. However, they faced a major obstacle. Neither had a car or any money. Their plan was to take Michael's father's car and drive to Maryland, where they could ask Courtney's grandparents for financial assistance. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. Michael stole his father's car, but while on the way to Maryland, they changed their minds and turned back home. This decision led to serious consequences for both Michael and Courtney. Michael's parents reported him to the police, and he was charged with car theft, resulting in a 70-day. Furthermore, Michael's parents insisted that he end his relationship with Courtney, believing it to be detrimental to him. This relationship was indeed harmful to both of them. Michael was forced to break up with Courtney, but he refused. As a result, his parents decided to kick him out of the house, leaving him homeless. He began sneaking into Courtney's apartment to sleep there, something he had done occasionally before, but now happened every night. Additionally, Michael dropped out of college, changed his address to Stephen's, and put Stephen's phone number on his parole application without Stephen's involvement or permission. Although Michael had nowhere to live, he made no attempt to find a job, which left Courtney to pay all of her father's credit card bills. When Stephen attempted to talk to his daughter about her mounting debt, an unforeseen tragedy struck first. On February 10, 2004, Elaine, Stephen's new girlfriend, attempted to call him multiple times, but he didn't answer. Concerned that something might be wrong, she decided to go to his house. Between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m., she drove to his place and was surprised by what she saw. Michael, Courtney's boyfriend, was walking down the street with Steven's dog, wearing one of Steven's t-shirts. Feeling uneasy, Elaine got out of her car and approached the front door of Steven's house, where she found Courtney standing by the entrance. Elaine tried to enter, but the door was locked. She asked Courtney where her father was, but Courtney said she didn't know and left without opening the door, taking the key with her. Elaine saw that Steven's truck was still parked in its usual spot, which made her even more worried, so she decided to call the police. When the local police arrived, they quickly obtained a search warrant following Elaine's phone call. They entered the house through the back door and began their search, uncovering a horrific scene. Inside Steven's room, they found blood splatter on the walls. The most shocking discovery was Steven's body in a plastic trash can. He had a severed ear and a disfigured face. It was clear that the perpetrator didn't bother to hide their actions. Additionally, the police found several bank statements on the dining room table, many of them circled in pen. Meanwhile, Courtney was missing. Elaine learned of the altercation between Steven, his daughter, and her boyfriend, so the police quickly began a search. The police found Michael in the restroom of the mall across the street from Steven's house. As Elaine said, he was wearing one of Steven's t-shirts and had Steven's wallet, car keys, and credit cards in his possession. The police took Michael in for questioning. After leaving her father's apartment earlier that day, Courtney simply went to her mother's house, where her mother made her turn herself in. During questioning, Michael initially insisted that he knew nothing about the murder. Michael claimed that after being kicked out of the house, he had been living in Courtney's closet. One day, when Steven returned home, Courtney woke Michael up and told him that her father had found out he was staying with them. When he asked Courtney why, she said she would explain later and asked him to walk the dog, which he did. Michael ran to the mall because he was worried that Steven would find out he was near his home. However, after the police informed him of Steven's death, his story changed dramatically. He began to cry and said that after Steven tried to confront Courtney about the missing money on his credit card, she asked Michael to kill Steven and he agreed. His story shifts from being unaware of the death to saying he was asked to kill Steven. Courtney's interrogation was also unproductive. She gave two different statements. In her first interrogation, she blamed Michael entirely, claiming she had no knowledge of her father's death until he informed her. In a later confession, however, she revealed much more information to police. Courtney maintained that the murder was Michael's idea and admitted to helping him by removing Steven's dog from the room before the incident and placing the bat by the bedroom door. She said she heard everything while Michael killed her father. But by the end of the trial in September 2006, her story had changed dramatically. Courtney was convicted of murder. When asked if she had any final statements, she maintained her innocence throughout the trial but stated that she wanted to publicly acknowledge that Michael Morin did not kill her father. She took full responsibility and agreed to her sentence. This shocking admission took everyone in the courtroom by surprise. However, Courtney's stance changed less than a year later. At Michael's trial in April 2007, where he faced the death penalty if convicted, Courtney did not repeat her previous statement that she was solely responsible for the crime and that Michael had nothing to do with it. Ultimately, Michael Morin was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. In 2017, Courtney Schulhoff was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Although both men involved were punished, the exact details of the case remain unclear. It was confirmed that Steven was killed with a baseball bat. But it is still unclear which of the two did the killing. Courtney did not confess to killing her father, but Michael did. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sidney Powell. Brenda Powell was born in 1969 in Saline, Agua, USA. She graduated from high school and then attended Akron University. After completing her studies, she began working as a pediatrician in the oncology department of her local children's hospital. For over 28 years, she has dedicated herself to helping sick children. Brenda oversees inpatient care and is known to her peers and hospital staff as a calm, quiet person who is exceptionally kind to both patients and their parents. In November 1996, Brenda, 27, married Stephen Powell and took his last name. They were introduced through a mutual friend who worked with her at the hospital. The couple enjoyed a happy life together for 23 years and welcomed 2 children. A daughter named Sydney and a son named Andrew. Since childhood, Sydney has been passionate about sports, especially football. Her family watched football together every Sunday, which helped strengthen their relationship. They also regularly visited the beach and Disneyland. As Sydney grew older, she and her mother, Brenda, began to spend more time together. While her father and brother watched football, they enjoyed shopping, which further strengthened their relationship. Sydney did well in high school, which helped her pass her exams and gain admission to Mount Union University, where she also received a scholarship. In college, she became friends with Lauren and a group of female students while living on campus. She participated in school events and was introduced to many different activities. Friends described Sydney as friendly and easygoing. Sydney's academic journey took an unexpected turn after her first year. Initially, everything seemed fine. She excelled in her classes and was praised by her teachers, ranking among the top students. Sydney began working part-time during the summer holidays to earn extra money. However, during her second year, Sydney faced significant challenges and decided to move off campus. Her friends were initially confused by this sudden decision but later learned that Sydney was struggling academically. Her grades were dropping. Additionally, Sydney began sleeping excessively, often around 16 hours a day. Sydney's friends thought she could handle it all because she was a smart and hardworking student who had previously done well in school. Unfortunately, Sydney struggled and ended up failing 3 out of 4 exams. Due to strict regulations, she received a notice of expulsion from the university, which shocked everyone. Sydney was worried and shared her concerns with her friends. Fortunately, they informed her that she could reapply for admission. At the beginning of 2020, Sydney resumed her studies, attending classes and sorority meetings. She happily told her friends that she had been readmitted to the university and was doing well. In early February, Sydney was notified that she had to leave the school permanently and that her expulsion would remain in effect. She was offered assistance with moving and packing. And the school planned to notify her parents of her situation to help cover her expenses. However, Sydney told the school administration that her family already knew and did not need to be contacted. This was not true, and she was afraid that her parents would find out about her expulsion. During this time, she told her parents that she was doing well in school and had good grades, and that she had even won a scholarship. Her parents trusted her and had no reason to doubt her. After being evicted from campus, Sydney left but did not return home before the end of February. Instead, she stayed with friends in various hotels, paying in cash to avoid being tracked and to keep her situation at the university a secret. Although she worked part-time to support herself, her earnings were insufficient. Sydney constantly searched for online opportunities to make money but could not find a full-time job that would provide adequate support. She continued to live in hotels or with friends, afraid to go home. She cut back on everything and often did not eat enough. Eventually, she decided to return home, claiming that the campus was closed for renovations. She told her parents that she would stay with them while she went to college and still work. Her parents believed her and thought everything was fine. Sydney has been lying to her mother by saying that she is fine. Recently, Brenda has noticed some strange changes in her daughter's behavior. She discovers that Sydney is spending more time at home and not going to school, which raises concerns. This information later comes to light because Sydney's entire family uses the Life 360 app, a mobile phone location tracking app on a map for safety, allowing family members to know where each other are. On February 25, 2020, Brenda received a notification from the app that Sydney had stayed home all day instead of coming to college as scheduled. This worried Brenda, who was concerned that something was wrong. She contacted her daughter to find out what was going on. Sydney replied that she had a week off because her teacher was absent. She mentioned that students were given assignments to complete at home and were participating in remote learning. However, Brenda began to doubt Sydney's story. She told her daughter that her explanations did not seem right and reminded her of the importance of good grades to maintain her scholarship and graduate, which would affect her future job opportunities. She also emphasized the importance of attending school regularly. Sydney then reassured her mother that everything was fine and that she should not worry. The deception continued. On March 2nd, Sydney texted her mother, saying she was going to school and would be back by 2:30 p.m. Instead, she spent time with a friend, watching TV, while lying about her college situation. During this time, the parents noticed that something was wrong. Their daughter did not receive the scholarship, so her father, Stephen, had to pay her tuition. He tried to send money through the payment gateway, but could not complete the transaction because he had lost access to his account. Initially, he suspected a technical problem and decided to wait. However, when Stephen logged in on March 3rd while working at a metallurgical plant, he was still unable to complete the transaction. He then asked his daughter about the problem. Sydney reassured him not to worry and promised that she would look into the matter and resolve it. Stephen realized he could not delay any longer as the deadline was near, and he needed to pay for his daughter's studies quickly. He decided to contact the university himself to resolve the situation. When he called, the staff checked their records and informed him that Sydney was not listed as a student, meaning her access had been revoked. Stephen was shocked and thought there must be some mistake. He requested they verify the information again, and they confirmed that Sydney had indeed been expelled. However, the university staff would not disclose the date of her expulsion, citing confidentiality rules. Stephen used a tracking app to locate Sydney, who was supposed to be in class. Instead, he discovered she was at home while he was at work. He wanted to go home to talk to her, but he feared she might track his movements and run away. To avoid this, he left his phone at work and headed home. Before leaving, he called Sydney to gather information, but she avoided giving clear answers. During the conversation, she admitted that she was struggling at university and didn't like it there. However, she continued to lie, not confessing that she had been expelled a long time ago. Instead, she claimed she had just not been attending classes. Stephen was troubled by his daughter's situation. He believed she was capable and had a bright future ahead, but he worried that her lack of commitment to attending classes could hinder her progress. He wanted to talk to her about the issue so they could find a solution together. On his way to work, Stephen called Brenda to inform her about their daughter's learning difficulties. Although Brenda suspected something was wrong, she hoped it was not true. Throughout the call, Stephen was concerned about Sydney's situation. However, Brenda reassured him. With a background in psychology, she had a skill for helping others and wanted to use her experience to support their daughter. She promised Stephen that she would take time off work, go home, and have a calm and open discussion with Sydney to ensure that they could all make the best decision together. Brenda then tried to contact the school but was unsuccessful. She left a voicemail asking for a call back and then went home. When Brenda reached her private entrance, she told her husband what had happened and went inside. Meanwhile, teachers Michelle and John received Brenda's message and called her back within the hour. At approximately 12:36 p.m., Brenda answered the phone and spoke calmly to the teachers. Everything seemed normal until Brenda started screaming into the phone, followed by a series of noises. Michelle and John, who were listening on speakerphone, were confused about what was happening but sensed that something was wrong. Michelle and John were worried about what had happened and tried calling Brenda again, but she did not answer. After several tries, a woman finally picked up at 12:40 p.m., but it wasn't Brenda. The teachers recognized Sydney's voice and asked to speak to her mother, but the call suddenly ended. This situation made Michelle and John suspicious. They decided to contact the local police to check on Brenda. Police officer Kenneth Diss, a friend of Brenda's family, heard the call and was extremely concerned about the alarming situation. He personally called Stephen to ask what was going on at their house, but Stephen could not provide any information because he was not home. After thinking for a moment, Stephen recalled that Sydney and Brenda were supposed to be at home discussing their study problems. He suspected there might have been a conflict between his wife and daughter. But he couldn't imagine the reality of the situation. Stephen then rushed home and called his daughter, Sydney, to find out what was going on. Sydney reassures him that everything is fine and the atmosphere seems calm. However, when Stephen tells her that the police are on their way, Sydney suddenly becomes hysterical. She begins to cry and reveals that a robber has broken into the house and attacked them. The call then ends abruptly. The police had already arrived at the house when Sydney dashed out, covered in blood, and screaming. She told the officers a shocking story about a robber who had broken in and attacked her mother. She said she heard glass breaking and that her mother told her to run, so she did. Sydney then hid in a courtyard, anxiously listening. She then found her mother lying in a pool of blood and she tried to help her, which is how she got blood on her. Inside the house, officers found Brenda lying face up in a room. She was badly injured, with a bloody cast iron skillet nearby and a kitchen knife on the floor. Despite the broken glass, officers began to doubt Sydney's story. Her story about a robber seemed very unbelievable. An ambulance arrived quickly and took Brenda to hospital, where she was taken to the intensive care unit. Sadly, 50-year-old Brenda Powell died shortly after arriving. Sydney was also examined by paramedics, but no serious injuries were found. She was sedated, her cuts were bandaged, and she was sent home. Forensic experts who examined Brenda's body were shocked by the brutality of the attack. She had suffered a severe blow to the back of the head, which caused her scalp to detach from her skull. Additionally, she had numerous stab wounds, estimated to be between 20 and 30, mostly concentrated on her neck. There were also multiple bruises and cuts on her arms, suggesting she had tried to defend herself. A preliminary review of the situation led police to believe that Sydney's account of events was fabricated. Although Sydney was covered in blood and had several smaller cuts on her arms, they were significantly less severe than her mother's injuries. It was evident that the robbery had been staged, as nothing was taken from the house. Sydney's actions raised several questions. After her mother told her to leave the house, why didn't she run to the neighbors for help or call 911? Instead, she waited in the yard and later went back into the house without any apparent fear. None of the neighbors reported seeing a robber. The blood found on Sydney was tested and matched her mother's, including traces on the broken glass. Police sent the knife, believed to be the murder weapon, and the frying pan for analysis. Brenda's blood was found on these items, and no fingerprints or other DNA were found at the scene. It appears that Sydney injured herself when she stabbed her mother. Sydney Powell was then taken to the police station for questioning. After the initial panic subsided, she refused to answer any questions. By this time, police investigating the attack had learned about recent events in Sydney's university life. They discovered that she had been expelled a month earlier and had lied to her family about her situation, staying with friends in hotels instead. She was so afraid of disappointing those around her that she had lied not only to her parents but also to her classmates and others. Police believe that Sydney was so afraid of telling the truth that she decided to kill her mother when her mother started to suspect something was wrong. Despite this, Sydney chose to remain silent. 19-year-old Sydney Powell was arrested and charged with murdering Brenda. She also faced charges for causing serious injury and for tampering with evidence to mislead the investigation. Due to her mental health issues, she was unable to admit or deny her guilt. Her lawyer argued that she was insane, stating that Sydney had struggled with serious mental health problems since childhood. At the time of the offense, Sydney may have been experiencing a mental health crisis that affected her perception of her actions. Sydney faced several mental health issues that may have contributed to the violent incident, which led police to request a psychiatric evaluation. During the examination, Sydney spoke about her memories of that day but could only recall bits and pieces. She remembered sitting in the basement, anxious about her parents coming home after her father found out about her struggles. She also remembers her mother coming home and their conversation starting, when her mother comforted her and asked what happened at school. She wished her mother would leave her alone. Then she heard the sound of glass breaking, and then she couldn't remember anything else about what happened. Sydney informed her doctor that she had been experiencing hallucinations since she was 11 years old. She had always been very anxious, responsible, and self-critical, setting extremely high academic standards for herself. At times her anxiety became so intense that it affected her ability to concentrate on tests, leading to multiple psychological evaluations. After extensive evaluation and discussion with Sydney, the psychiatrist diagnosed her with acute post-traumatic stress disorder, schizoaffective disorder, and depression. Sydney reported that she had recurring nightmares of her mother covered in blood. The lack of a clear motive for the murder led the psychiatrist to determine that Sydney was insane at the time of the incident. Another doctor who worked with Sydney for at least 3 to 6 months before the crime noted that her mental health had deteriorated significantly. She started losing touch with reality and began failing her exams, which ultimately led to her expulsion from university. Her condition was worsened by extreme self-criticism. She couldn't accept that she had failed. Sydney was also afraid to confess her struggles to her parents. However, the truth eventually came out, causing her immense stress. This culminated in a psychotic breakdown that resulted in her mother's murder. After her arrest, Sydney's bail was initially set at $250,000 but was later raised to $500,000. One of her relatives posted bail, allowing her to await her trial outside of custody. During this time, she received treatment for her mental health issues and felt significantly better by the time the hearings began. Sydney eventually regained her composure. After Sydney saw Brenda talking to college teachers, she knew that her mother would soon hear the truth from them. In a psychotic state, she attacked her mother. Teachers at the college heard the beginning of the attack. During the trial, her friends and relatives confirmed that they did not notice any significant changes in her behavior leading up to the crime. Although she was upset about being expelled, she was generally cheerful and sociable. The only noticeable difference was that she began sleeping more. The defense acknowledged that Sydney killed her mother but maintained that she was insane at the time. However, many experts disagreed with the psychiatrist's diagnosis. What everyone agreed on was that she suffered from borderline personality disorder, which is characterized by stubbornness, mood swings, and self-destructive behavior. In addition, signs of hallucinations were reported by Sydney to a psychiatrist when she was 11. There was no evidence in the medical records to support Sydney's claims, which undermined the defense's strategy. Several former friends mentioned that Sydney had exhibited unusual behavior even during her school years. One teacher recalled when Sydney was so nervous that she couldn't read anything on a test. However, teacher didn't realize that Sydney's anxiety could indicate mental health issues, so teacher didn't tell anyone. This type of anxiety continued into college, which may have contributed to Sydney failing her exams and eventually being expelled. While awaiting trial, Sydney lived with her grandmother and was prescribed medication to treat her mental health issues. The medication list and dosage were changed several times to find the most effective combination. Sydney's health improved significantly, and she shared any positive changes with her doctor. Her father also noticed the improvement and admitted that Sydney had a strong bond with her mother and loved her deeply. He believed that if Sydney had been in a healthy state of mind, she would never have harmed her mother. Throughout the trial, Sydney cried continuously and she expressed remorse for her actions. On September 18, 2023, the jury deliberated. Sydney Powell was found guilty on all counts. Sydney was sentenced to life in prison but will be eligible for parole after 15 years. Sydney and her attorney were unhappy with the sentence and planned to appeal the court's decision. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Christopher Sutton. On Sunday, August 22, 2004, the Sutton family experienced a devastating tragedy following Susan's 57th birthday celebration. The celebration included Susan, her husband John, their son Christopher, his girlfriend Juliet, and family friend Teddy Montoda. After the party, Susan and John went to bed in separate rooms at their home in the upscale Coral Gables neighborhood near Miami, Florida. One night, a tragic event occurred. Susan usually slept in a separate room because her husband, John, snored loudly. While they were sleeping, a car stopped about 4 blocks away from their house. A man dressed in black was approaching their house with the intention of killing Susan and John. The attacker was armed with a 9mm Glock pistol and broke into Susan's house. He first went to John's bedroom and shot him twice in the head. He then moved to the room where Susan was sleeping, shot her 6 times, and left. The police were notified of the incident. Police and ambulances were dispatched to the scene shortly afterwards. Unfortunately, doctors determined that Susan, 57, had died. John was still alive but had suffered serious injuries and had lost a lot of blood. He was taken to hospital, where paramedics worked frantically to save him, although his chances of survival were slim. Before being taken to hospital, John said that he could not see the shooter in the dark and did not know who it was. Forensic experts began examining the crime scene, while police questioned neighbors and searched for surveillance cameras. Although no cameras were found, but neighbors reported seeing a suspicious man dressed in dark clothing running away from the house. There were no signs of forced entry. The killer had accessed the home through the sliding glass doors. The house was intact, with no money or jewelry taken, indicating to police that this was not a robbery. The attack was clearly targeted at killing Susan and John. But the motive behind the murder remains unknown. Melissa Sutton was 18 years old when her parents were attacked. As a freshman living on her own, she couldn't attend the celebration at their house. She was devastated to learn about her mother's death. Overwhelmed with grief, she went to see her father in the hospital. She described him as looking very unwell. John had miraculously survived 2 gunshot wounds to the head, leaving doctors astonished that he was still alive, although he remained in serious condition. When John woke up in intensive care, he realized he was blind. Additionally, he was experiencing severe shock. He felt unsafe in the hospital, constantly fearing that the killer might return. This left John feeling endangered. He was eager to leave the hospital and find a safe place to hide. His fears were taken seriously, so a guard was assigned to his room, and police patrolled the area around the clock. Due to the severity of his injuries, John was also unable to hear anything. He didn't hear the shots fired at his wife and was unaware of what happened to Susan. As he slowly started to recover, he asked Melissa how his wife was. She did not answer because the police had advised her not to say anything that might upset John further. He later found out that his wife had been murdered by her attacker. The news was a huge shock to him. Susan's death was a huge loss for the whole family. She had devoted her life to being a loving mother. Susan spent many years as an intensive care nurse, a respected profession in the United States. Her career ended in the late 1970s when she decided to stay at home with her husband, John, after the birth of their first child, Christopher. They made this choice because Susan had been unable to conceive for 7 years, at which point they decided to adopt a daughter, Melissa. The police discovered that John had built a successful business and may have had enemies. They also learned that he had received previous threats of violence. The police investigated everyone who had had animosity toward John and Susan, but they all had solid alibis. While the police searched the crime scene for evidence, they discovered that Susan's purse, jewelry belonging to her or her husband, were still intact. Although these items were visible, the police planned to interview John, but he had difficulty communicating. However, he was able to provide some useful information. Although he could not identify the shooter, he recalled seeing a dark figure at the door. The attacker may have been dressed all in black or may have been African American. John could not be certain in the darkness. Unfortunately, this information was not useful to the police. The police decided to speak with Teddy, a family friend who was at the party before the shooting. They visited his house for an interview. Teddy explained that he was on the phone with Susan at the exact moment the shooting happened. He heard a gunshot, followed by silence. Feeling frightened, he called the police, got into his car, and rushed to the Susan family's home, arriving just after the police. Teddy was very shaken by the attack on Susan. However, the police found his account unusual. They questioned why he was still talking to Susan when everyone else had already left the party, leading them to suspect an affair. Teddy clarified that he was not just a family friend but also a business partner. He claimed that they were discussing an urgent business matter and that he frequently communicated with both John and Susan to handle various issues, so he didn't find his late conversation with Susan abnormal. During the conversation, Teddy told the police that the shooters were professional and trained shooters. The police found this information interesting and took Teddy's gun for testing. Teddy was also called into the station for a lie detector test. The police believed he was hiding something and continued to question him. Teddy eventually confessed that he was in a romantic relationship with Susan. The police have often seen love triangles that can lead people to commit terrible acts. However, Teddy's gun did not match the weapon used in the attack and his phone was tracked to a location far from the crime scene at the time of the shooting. Teddy denied any involvement in the attack on John and Susan. Although his lie detector test was deemed inconclusive, it was suggested that his anxiety stemmed from trying to keep his affair with Susan a secret to avoid damaging his relationship with his friend John. John had a strong and trusting relationship with Teddy. Shortly before the incident, John and Teddy received one of the largest payouts in their law firm's history, over $1 million, and they celebrated this occasion extravagantly. Teddy was ruled out as a suspect, and the police decided to investigate other family members instead. An examination revealed that John could not have physically inflicted the shot on himself, so he was not considered a suspect. Their daughter Melissa has a solid alibi because she was in another city and also passed a lie detector test. The police then investigated Christopher Sutton. He had a girlfriend named Juliet. They had attended a family party together. Christopher quickly claimed that he and Juliet had gone to the movies the night before and provided their tickets as evidence. Juliet confirmed his story. The police then requested the cinema's surveillance camera footage, confirming that they had indeed gone to the cinema that night and confirming their alibi. After leaving the hospital, John moved in with Christopher so he could care for him for a while. However, disturbing evidence was discovered that Christopher actually wanted to kill his parents. He even threatened to kill his mother during a fight. Christopher became the prime suspect in the case. Additionally, Christopher had a criminal record that included vandalizing a teacher's home. When Christopher was 16, his parents, John and Susan, decided to send him to a reform school. Christopher was aggressive and had trouble controlling his anger, which made it difficult for him to socialize with other teenagers. He changed schools at least 6 times. He often skipped school. John would drop him off at the main entrance, walk to the door, but then Christopher would sneak out through another exit and go do his own thing. However, his absences were not his biggest problem. He also got involved in some criminal activities. One day, he and a group of friends broke into a teacher's house, causing damage and graffiti. As a result, Christopher was arrested and the teacher filed a lawsuit against him. The damage was estimated to be in excess of $50,000, and his parents had to pay it. Christopher's family had no financial problems and could easily pay the fine. However, his family was frustrated with their son's out-of-control behavior and did not know how to handle him. Christopher was a difficult teenager who had no respect for adult authority. His rebellion began with his love of piercings and tattoos, which his parents strongly disapproved of. Despite their efforts, they were unable to change his behavior, which led to more problems. One day, Christopher pointed an unloaded rifle at his mother and sister, threatening to kill them. Shortly before Christopher's 16th birthday, Susan discovered a note in his room that outlined a plan to kill his parents to inherit their money. Susan informed John about the note, and they confronted Christopher, who dismissed it as a joke. However, when his parents saw the note, they became frightened. From that point on, they were afraid to be alone with their son in the house. They even sought legal help, which led to a court-ordered rehabilitation program. Staff from a specialist organization forcibly transferred Christopher to a rehabilitation facility on the island of Samoa called Paradise Bay. It is a strict school for troubled youth. In 1998, when Christopher first arrived at this institution, his behavior became extremely aggressive, leading to him being restrained. Following this, he was taken to a remote camp in the mountains, where he was left tied up. The staff aimed to re-educate him through these strict measures. Typically, such severe discipline was effective and helped even the most challenging cases to improve. After spending a year in a behavior correction facility, Christopher sent his parents an emotional video message. In it, he described the violence he experienced there and accused his parents of not loving him for sending him to such a place. Upon hearing this, his parents visited institutions for troubled teenagers in Samoa but found nothing wrong. As a result, they did not believe Christopher's claims. They knew about the strict rules in place and believed they were intended to benefit troubled teens. Furthermore, Christopher was there under a court order, so his parents could not take him away. However, Christopher still hoped to leave the facility when he turned 18. John then received a court order stating that Christopher would remain in custody. The program at Paradise Bay was extended for another year, which surprised Christopher. But he had no choice but to remain at the facility. In 2000, Paradise Bay was closed after management faced multiple allegations of youth mistreatment. Christopher finally returned home on his 19th birthday, after 30 months at Paradise Bay. This situation raised concerns for the police, as his anger at being mistreated could be considered a motive for murder. After enduring such torture, Christopher may have felt the urge to take revenge on his parents. However, after returning from Paradise Bay, he changed. Christopher always showed that he had become a caring and calm son, especially in how he took care of his father following an incident. John could not believe that his son could be involved in the case, believing that Christopher had changed. However, the police suspected that Christopher had orchestrated the double murder, which was only partially successful because his father survived. Although Christopher had an alibi, he may have hired someone else to carry out the crime. The police needed to gather evidence to support their suspicions. So they brought him in for a second interview. In this conversation, Christopher reveals details that have not been revealed to the public and remain confidential. Christopher said he went to the scene of the incident. He saw the shooter walking down the hallway, and his mother Susan had been shot 6 times, information that was later confirmed during the investigation. Christopher also recounted the order in which the shots were fired and other key details. While Christopher appears distraught and cries over his mother's death, the police believe he is lying and is actually a criminal. However, Christopher was supported by his girlfriend Juliet, who also seemed shocked by the incident. She said she herself had been in shock for a long time, following the news of the shooting. Juliet met Christopher when she was 17, and he was 19, having just returned from a school for troubled youth. She described him as kind, polite and courteous, and he made a strong positive impression on her. He treated her like a true gentleman. So she could never imagine that he could commit murder. Juliet said that his parents welcomed her into their family. His mother, Susan, taught her how to apply makeup and helped her develop her dressing style. His father, John, also supported her by giving her a job at his law firm. The couple's parents supported them financially without expecting anything in return. They were happy to see the couple together. When police first encountered Christopher at the crime scene, it was shortly after he had been informed of the incident. He appeared to be very upset, and one officer noticed tears on his face. However, his initial statement to police during questioning shattered the impression of sadness. He quickly explained that he and Juliet had had dinner with their parents but left at around 9 p.m. to go to the movies. He then gave the police their movie tickets. Instead of asking how his parents were doing, he focused on justifying his actions and emphasized his alibi before any charges were brought. Police carefully reviewed surveillance footage from the cinema, which showed Christopher leaving after the movie around midnight. They noticed he immediately used his mobile phone to make a call, arousing curiosity about who he was contacting. The police quickly checked all his calls. Police later determined that Christopher had contacted a man named Garrett Kopp 331 times in the days leading up to the murder, which raised suspicions. Garrett, a police officer with a criminal record, had come to the attention of police. They suspected he might be involved in the crime. The case drew attention to Garrett's troubled past, including multiple arrests, adding to police suspicions. Police began to consider Garrett as a potential suspect. At the time of the case, he was out on bail. When police examined the weapon used in the murder, they found it to be very similar to Garrett's Glock, so he was taken to the station for questioning. Garrett had a tense conversation with the police and later admitted to attacking John and Susan. However, Garrett insisted that he did not act on his own. He said that Christopher had threatened to kill him and his son if he did not comply. Garrett insisted that the idea for the attack was entirely Christopher's. He also said that Christopher had given him the gun and had left the door unlocked, allowing him easy access to the house. The police arrested Garrett and charged him with murder, but his testimony was not enough to keep Christopher in custody. Juliet was questioned by police who believed she had more information than she was revealing. Despite their efforts, she denied any involvement and insisted on her innocence for several hours. The interrogation lasted 13 hours in total, but the police did not record it. Later, Juliet alleged that police had threatened her with arrest to force a confession and acted provocatively during the questioning. However, she eventually admitted that Christopher felt a strong resentment towards his parents for placing him in a facility for troubled teenagers. Recently, his parents tried to push him to get a job and start covering his own costs, which he found unacceptable, and this led to family conflicts. During questioning, Juliet revealed that Christopher had been planning revenge on his parents for years. He often spoke about the inheritance and how they could live without worries if he could take everything his parents had earned. However, she didn't take his threats seriously. The police had gathered enough evidence to obtain an arrest warrant for Christopher Sutton. However, by that time, he had disappeared. This was a crucial moment for the police, as they feared that Christopher might return to harm John. Fortunately, the police were able to locate and arrest Christopher, charging him with the murder of his mother and attempted murder of his father. Garrett Kopp and Christopher Sutton were eventually tried separately, and both faced the death penalty. Christopher, however, maintained that he had no role in planning the crime. The defense argued that the police were unfair, claiming that the police pressured Juliet, which influenced her testimony. After Garrett learned that he could face the death penalty, Garrett decided to cooperate with the prosecution by pleading guilty to a lesser charge, which was in his favor. He was then sentenced to 30 years in prison. The prosecution's case took a turn when Juliet appeared in court to testify. She revealed that Christopher had often expressed anger at his parents for not giving him money, even saying that they deserved to die for their actions. The defense argued that much of Juliet's testimony was given under police pressure and should be excluded from the case. However, the judge denied this request. In court, Juliet maintained that she had been truthful during her interrogation with the police. She stated that she viewed Christopher's anger as mere frustration and never believed he would go on to commit such serious crimes. After Juliet's testimony, John, the surviving father, shared his thoughts. After hearing all the witness testimony, John believed that Christopher was capable of committing the crime. John noted that even after leaving the hospital, Christopher continued to try to manage the family's finances, which led him to believe that Christopher was involved in the crime. When it was Christopher's turn to speak, he accused Garrett of attacking their parents due to his drug addiction. Christopher highlighted several moments when Garrett was out of control due to drugs, claiming that during those times he was dangerous and capable of committing any crime. Christopher also mentioned that he kept drugs in Susan's bedroom closet. The Garrett might have entered the house to steal illegal drugs. However, the prosecutor argued that the scene did not appear to be a burglary, everything was intact, even the money and jewelry were intact. If it was a burglary, Garrett would have taken valuables. In his defense, Christopher claimed that he had changed and overcome the anger, resentment, and disappointment he felt towards his parents for sending him to a special school. He believed that he had changed for the better. After extensive deliberation, the jury found Christopher Sutton guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder. Christopher was shocked by the verdict because he was sure that he would be acquitted. Christopher received 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Currently, survivor John Sutton is putting in great effort to regain his eyesight. He has formed a new relationship and started a family, and at 70 years old, he continues to practice law. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of William Lewis Reese. On May 16, 1997, 19-year-old Sandra Sapow stopped at a gas station in Webster, Texas to make a phone call from a pay phone. After making the call, she got back in her car and started driving, but soon discovered that her tire was flat. Sandra was forced to stop and was considering her options when a man in a white truck, who had been following her, stopped to offer help. The man appeared to be a kind stranger, and Sandra accepted his offer and got into his truck. The man restrained Sandra inside the truck and bound her wrists, then continued driving along Interstate 45. Sandra was terrified at this point and discovered that the truck doors were unlocked. Despite being pregnant, she was forced to jump out of the truck to escape her attacker. Unfortunately, he grabbed her, causing her to be dragged for several miles on the sidewalk. She eventually escaped, but was seriously injured. Sandra was taken to a nearby hospital, where the police were contacted. She described her attacker, but due to her trauma, she was unable to recall important details. That was not enough to arrest the attacker. With no other clues to the attacker's identity, the police decided to hypnotize Sandra. A few months later, while under hypnosis, she recalled important details, including the truck's license plate. The license plate led to a man named William Reese. William Lewis Reese was born on July 1, 1959, in Oklahoma. He was one of 13 siblings. As a child, he lived in the cities of Yukon and Anadarko. Due to his parents' difficult financial situation, he was forced to drop out of school in the 9th grade and work as a farm laborer. William married Judy Flaming in 1979, after she became pregnant. William joined the Oklahoma National Guard, but his time in the Guard was short-lived. His marriage to Judy was also troubled, and the couple divorced just a year after their marriage. Despite this, William convinced Judy to give their marriage another chance. They remarried and had a second child, but their reunion did not last long. William began drinking heavily and abusing Judy. The situation worsened in 1982 when Judy reported to the police that William had beaten her and threatened to kill her with a knife and a shotgun. As a result, Judy filed for divorce from William for the second time. William later remarried, but the marriage did not last long, as his second wife divorced him after only a few months. After the divorce, William continued his life of crime. In April 1986, he kidnapped a 19-year-old woman, the daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy. The woman was driving to a local gym when her car got stuck. William, who was working as a truck driver at the time, lured her into his truck, promising to take her to the nearest payphone. Once she was in the truck, he tied her up and sexually assaulted her. William drove the victim to a nearby motel where he rented a room. When he allowed her to use the bathroom, she took the opportunity to escape and call the police. William was arrested and charged but released on bail, but a month later he attacked another woman and was arrested again. He was then tried for both crimes, convicted, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. However, William appealed the conviction and had his sentence reviewed. The review found flaws in his case, leading to a reduction in his sentence. As a result, he was paroled in October 1996, after serving only 9.5 years of his original sentence. William moved to his mother's house in Anadarko, Oklahoma, after his release from prison. He then regained his driver's license in early 1997 and moved to Houston, Texas. There, William attempted to kidnap and sexually assault Sandra Sapau. This eventually led to his conviction for aggravated kidnapping in 1998 and his sentence of 60 years in prison. But while William was serving his sentence, police suspected him of being involved in many other crimes. It took years to unravel the secrets William had taken with him to prison while many families waited for answers. On the drizzly morning of April 3, 1997, around 9 a.m., 12-year-old Laura Smither asked her mother for permission to go jogging alone around 9 a.m. It was a decision that would prove to be one her mother would regret for the rest of her life. Laura, the daughter of Bob and Gay Smither, grew up in a house in Friendswood with her younger brother. She was known for her kind and gentle nature. Laura was not only an excellent student but also a talented ballet dancer from a very young age. Her dream of becoming a professional ballerina began to take shape after recently being accepted into the prestigious Houston Ballet Academy. When she asked to go for a run that fateful day, her mother was surprised because Laura never went out much. In fact, she didn't even go to school and was homeschooled by her parents. However, Laura had recently been inspired to do cardio to improve her dancing skills and wanted to go for a run while her mother was cooking breakfast. Her mother allowed her to go for a short run because she never thought anything bad would happen to her. Laura's parents began to panic when she didn't return after a few hours. She was always closely supervised and had never been out alone for so long, so they knew something was wrong. Laura's father searched the neighborhood but found no sign of her. Initially, they thought she would return soon, but as the hours passed, they realized something was wrong. The parents then contacted Laura's relatives and friends to see if anyone had any information about her whereabouts, but no one had any. After an unsuccessful search, they contacted the police to file a missing person report. Laura's father explained the situation to the police. "My daughter went jogging this morning, but she was gone much longer than I expected." The investigation into Laura's disappearance began, and her family immediately received support from the community. Volunteers, holding Laura's photo in their hands, went door to door asking residents if they had any information about the missing 12-year-old. However, their efforts stopped when night fell. The next morning, the police began an active search for Laura. A foot search party was deployed to the forest, while helicopters were also used to search for potential clues. Unfortunately, no clues were found during this time. Despite the lack of progress, community morale remained high, with hundreds of volunteers joining the search effort. The search continued for a week, with 6,000 volunteers involved. The National Coast Guard, along with the FBI, also joined the local police department to assist in the search. Although the possibility that Laura had become lost in the woods was initially considered, by this point in the investigation, police suspected foul play. Hoping to continue the search, the community held candlelight vigils and prayers in Laura's name, keeping alive the hope of finding her. However, another week passed without any leads in the case. On Sunday, April 20th, 1997, a meeting was held at Friendswood High School to discuss the next steps in the search. During the meeting, the sheriff received a phone call, causing his expression to become anxious, causing concern among those present, who wondered what had happened. Around 10 p.m., Laura's parents received heartbreaking news. Laura's body had been found near a Pasadena reservoir, 12 miles from where Laura had disappeared. A man walking his dog discovered Laura's badly decomposed body in a muddy area. She was wearing only a pair of socks. 17 days after Laura went missing, her body was finally found, but in a brutal and tragic state. She had been brutally beaten and strangled to death. The news sent shockwaves through the Friendswood community, leaving residents heartbroken and fearful that a predator was on the loose and could target others. Determined to catch the perpetrator, the police acted quickly. However, they had no information about the person responsible for this heinous crime. In an effort to gather leads, they began interviewing local sex offenders. Soon, William Lewis Reese came to their attention. William, 38, was working at Windsor Estate in Friendswood as an equipment operator. Curiously, on the day of Laura's disappearance, he left work around the time Laura went missing and returned 30 minutes later. However, even after an extensive investigation, police found no solid evidence linking him to the crime. As a result, the case remained unsolved for many years. Kelly Cox was a 20-year-old student who went on a field trip to the local Denton prison on July 15, 1997, with her classmates for a criminology class. Before entering the prison, she parked her car in the parking lot across from the police station and hid the spare key in a magnetic box under the car. Following the professor's instructions, she locked her other belongings, including her cell phone, in the car. After completing the prison tour at noon, Kelly quickly left because she had to take a test that day at the University of North Texas, where she was a student. Kelly tried to leave by unlocking the car door with the spare key. But it did not work. She had checked the key the night before and it was fine. Kelly was unable to use her cell phone, so she went to a nearby gas station to use a public phone to call her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris III, for help. After the call, she went inside the gas station, bought a drink, and disappeared. Lawrence arrived about 45 minutes later, but Kelly's car was still in the parking lot and she was nowhere to be found. Her keys and key fob were also missing. Lawrence searched for Kelly but could not find her. He then called Kelly's mother to check if she had returned home, but she had not. At the time, the situation seemed suspicious, but Kelly's family decided to wait a little longer to see if she returned. However, their concerns grew as time went on. By 5:30 p.m., they believed something was wrong. This was the time Kelly was supposed to pick up her 19-month-old daughter, Alexis, from her babysitter. Knowing Kelly was a responsible mother, they realized that it was unusual for her to miss this appointment or not arrange for someone else to pick up Alexis. After the missing persons report was filed, police immediately began searching for Kelly. As is standard procedure in missing persons cases, they began questioning those closest to her. The first person they looked at was her boyfriend, Lawrence, but he was cleared as a suspect after passing 4 polygraph tests. A subsequent tip led them to another suspect, William Lewis Reese, who was also a suspect in the Laura Smither case. Although William did not live in Denton at the time of Kelly's disappearance, a gas station receipt placed him in the area on the same day Kelly went missing. Given William's history as a sex offender, he became a priority suspect, prompting police to search his car for any sign of Kelly, specifically her fingerprints. However, no fingerprints were found, leaving police with no further evidence linking William to Kelly's disappearance. With no leads, no witnesses, and no surveillance footage, the case quickly went cold and remained so for years to come. Kelly's disappearance was difficult for her mother and stepfather, as they had to raise Alexis on their own. As the years passed, Kelly never returned to her daughter, but following in her mother's footsteps, Alexis continued to attend the same college as Kelly, holding out hope that her mother would one day return. Over the years, Kelly's loved ones continued to share her story and circulate her photo, never giving up hope that she would return home. Unfortunately, their wishes have yet to come true. Jessica Kane, a 17-year-old high school student, was reported missing by her mother on August 17, 1997. At approximately 1:30 a.m. that morning, Jessica had left a cast party at Bennigan's on Bay Avenue Boulevard after a concert in Dickinson, Texas. The party was attended by her friends from the show. When her mother found out that Jessica had not returned home, she began calling the friends who had been with her that night. They confirmed that Jessica had left the party but had not returned home. Born on August 28, 1979, Jessica was known for her cheerful personality, love of sports and passion for drama, and was captain of the drill team at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas. Jessica's parents immediately became concerned that something had happened to her. When her father went to look for her, he discovered her car parked near the Lomark exit off the highway with her valuables still inside. He immediately contacted the police, who along with hundreds of volunteers were involved in the search for Jessica. During this difficult time, Jessica's parents met Bob and Gay Smither, who were also searching for their missing daughter, Laura. Laura Smither's family, who were also going through their own horrific nightmare, remained steadfast in their support of Jessica's parents and joined the search. Despite the efforts of the police and community to find Jessica, no sign or evidence of her turned up. The police began to suspect foul play and thought the chances of finding Jessica alive were extremely low. After weeks of searching, the case was dropped. But Jessica's family never gave up on finding answers. We are being forced to learn patience, an extremely difficult lesson, to wait, to be calm, and to trust in God. Tiffany Johnson was a 19-year-old woman who went missing on July 26, 1997. Her car was found abandoned at a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma, but there was no sign of her. Born on April 6, 1978, to Michael and Kathy Dobe, Tiffany is the youngest daughter in her family. She is very close to her family, especially her mother. Tiffany grew up as a cheerful and active girl in a small town. She enjoyed spending time outdoors, often helping her grandfather with his gardening and taking care of plants. After graduating from high school in 1996, Tiffany married Ryan Johnson in 1997 and moved to Bethany, Oklahoma with him. To save money for college, she took on 2 jobs while planning to enroll in Oklahoma State University and study botany. However, her plans never came to fruition. On July 26, 1997, Tiffany finished her part-time shift at a restaurant around 2 p.m. She was excited to celebrate her 3-month wedding anniversary with her husband, Ryan, and had planned to meet him at 11 p.m. Before leaving, Tiffany returned home, showered, and drove off in her white Dodge Neon. Tiffany went to the Sunshine Car Wash to have her car washed. She was never seen again. Her husband began searching for her that night, checking her home and other possible locations, but she was nowhere to be found. Around midnight, a Bethany police officer stumbled upon Tiffany's abandoned car at the car wash. Police found the car door open, the keys still in the ignition, and found Tiffany's wallet inside. In the glove box, police found Tiffany's mother's phone number. However, when police contacted Tiffany's mother, Kathy, who lived 60 miles away in Anadarko, she had no information about her daughter's disappearance. Tiffany's husband, Ryan, was the next person police contacted, but he also had no information about his wife's whereabouts. At this point, it was clear that something was wrong. Before police could begin searching for Tiffany, a disturbing discovery was made on July 27, 1997, near the intersection of I-40 and Gregory Street. A search party looking for another missing girl stumbled upon the body of a young white woman. Police suspected that the body might be Tiffany's as soon as they arrived on the scene. After being shown a photo of the victim, Ryan quickly confirmed that it was indeed his wife. An autopsy could not determine the exact time of her death, but it indicated that she had been the victim of sexual assault and strangulation. Police collected and preserved an unidentified DNA sample found on her body as evidence. With no leads on a suspect, police initially focused on the husband, Ryan, as a potential suspect in his wife's death. However, an alibi soon came to light, revealing that Ryan had been at work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. on the day Tiffany was last seen. Tiffany's last known whereabouts were at the car wash at 6 p.m. Just when the investigation seemed to be stalling, a crucial clue emerged. It was revealed that Tiffany's cause of death involved sexual assault, as well as severe head and shoulder trauma. The car wash owner soon contacted the police, reporting that a suspicious person, matching the description of a man wanted for kidnapping in Texas a few months earlier, had been seen at the car wash on the same day Tiffany went missing. That man was none other than William Lewis Reese. His mother was a close friend of Tiffany's mother, and William even called Tiffany's mother, Kathy, after her daughter's death to offer his condolences. However, William was able to evade justice for a while, as the police investigation into Tiffany's murder failed to produce any evidence implicating him. Years later, in 2015, police made a significant breakthrough in the case thanks to advances in DNA technology. A DNA sample collected during Tiffany's autopsy was retested and matched a profile in a national database, known as CODIS, linking William to the crime. William was then charged in Oklahoma City with Tiffany's 1997 kidnapping and murder. Just as his trial was about to begin, William suddenly confessed to other crimes in an attempt to negotiate a deal with the prosecution. William had eluded police for nearly 19 years, despite having a serious criminal history, including armed kidnapping. Police suspected him of murdering Laura Smither and of being involved in the disappearances of Jessica Kane and Kelly Cox. To confirm their suspicions, they showed him photos of the three victims. William quickly admitted responsibility but denied any sexual motive behind the crimes. William agreed to reveal the location of Kelly and Jessica's remains in order to avoid facing the death penalty. In April 2016, he led police to a site in a Houston pasture where human remains were discovered. After several days of excavation, the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that the remains belonged to Jessica Kane. The search then shifted to a separate burial site in Brazoria County, where another set of remains were found. Using dental records, police identified the remains as those of Kelly Cox. The trial for the murder of Tiffany Johnston took place in May 2021 in Oklahoma County District Court. A jury found William Lewis Reese guilty on May 28, 2021. The judge then sentenced William to death on August 19, 2021, for the kidnapping and murder of Tiffany. After his conviction, William was extradited to Texas in March 2022 to stand trial for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane. William pleaded guilty to all three murders and was sentenced to life in prison in June 2022. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mikhail Bush. Mikhail Bush was born on February 13, 1997, in Alberta, Canada. She is the eldest of two daughters. She attended a local high school, where she met Cody McConnell. They began their relationship in the summer of 2014. Later their relationship blossomed and they decided to start a family together. After graduating, Mikhail worked at a public organization that supported people with disabilities by finding nurses and meeting their needs. There, she realized her passion for helping people. At work, she learned the basics of healthcare and decided to pursue a career in nursing. To achieve this, she needed formal training, so Mikhail enrolled at Northwest College in Edmonton. She devoted all her free time to studying, determined to become a skilled professional. Working in the medical field in Canada is respected and well paid. This meant that pursuing a major that she loved would allow her to support their small family. Her relationship with Cody grew stronger, and he supported her in her studies. At that time, they lived together. In 2019, shortly after graduating, she found out she was pregnant. This was an important and anticipated event for the young couple, and they were very excited. Everything went as well as could be. Their dream of expanding their family became a reality. Soon after, the young couple got married and began preparing for their future child. On April 17, 2020, they welcomed a son named Noah McConnell. After his birth, Mikhail and Cody devoted themselves to taking care of their child and supported each other wholeheartedly. At this time, Mikhail and Cody lived happily together. Noah was a very cute child. He rarely cried, and when he did, it usually stopped very quickly. However, a few months later, Cody had difficulty working and was easily tired, so his wife Mikhail advised him to go to the hospital. After the examination, Cody was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Because of this, he lost his job. Cody was on sick leave for a long time, but during this time, they always supported and understood each other. The couple tried their best to maintain their happiness. After a while, Cody was able to return to his job. He worked in the installation of turboprop engines, a job that required frequent business trips to different cities. This sudden change in lifestyle naturally affected the family. At that time, Mikhail was a housewife, taking care of her children without a regular job. In order to avoid being apart for a long time, they decided to buy a mobile home. Life on the road was difficult, but the family stayed together. By August 2020, their life had undergone significant positive changes. Cody secured a higher-paying job, allowing him to spend more time at home. The couple traveled frequently to different locations, but they had the opportunity to rent an apartment in Hinton, Alberta. This small town is 3 hours west of Edmonton, near Jasper National Park. The move, which meant they no longer had to live on the road, marked a long-awaited change in their family life. In early September, the couple and their child moved into their new home. The apartment was much more spacious than their previous home and certainly larger than the small trailer they had been living in. Cody could finally settle down with his family and focus on building a life together. However, the young couple had no idea that their happiness would soon turn into a nightmare so severe that a change in the law would be necessary. On September 16, 2021, in Canada, the day started like any other morning for the family. Cody took his child for a walk and they spent money on entertainment, something they could not afford before. Now that life had improved, Cody was able to spend more time with his 16-month-old son. Cody then went to work as usual, leaving his wife at home. His shift ended around 5 or 6 p.m., and he returned home, eager to spend more time with his son. However, when he got home, the apartment was quiet. The child did not respond to his name or make any noises as usual. The silence was alarming. After searching all the rooms, Cody realized that his family was actually not home, which was unusual. Cody thought that his wife might have gone to the store with the baby for a while. But upon closer inspection, he realized that was unlikely, as the stroller was still in the apartment, neatly folded and untouched. Without the stroller, they would not have gone for a walk, and his wife's car was still parked outside, which made him even more worried. Cody ran around the apartment screaming, but the silence made him suspicious. In the kitchen, he discovered another worrying sign. His wife had started cooking dinner but had stopped abruptly. The groceries were still on the table, some cut and some still intact. It seemed like something had interrupted her, which made Cody extremely worried. He tried calling his wife but couldn't get through. With no answer and growing increasingly worried, he decided to take action. Although he didn't want to believe that anything bad had happened, he hoped they had just gone to a nearby park or plaza and lost track of time. Desperate to find her, he set off immediately. With increasing anxiety, he searched alleys and parks but found no trace of his wife and son. After going through the area around the apartment complex several times, he contacted friends and family, hoping that she was with someone he knew. However, no one heard or saw her all day. Around 7 p.m., in desperation, Cody called the police to report that his wife and son were missing. Cody called a friend named Jareth, who came to their home to help. Together, they began searching the neighborhood, still hoping to find Mikhail and his son without police intervention. They checked the apartment again and walked around the entire apartment complex several times. Unable to calm down, they began going from apartment to apartment, knocking on doors and asking neighbors if they had seen or heard anything. When the police arrived, Cody and Jarrett were still searching. The police had to calm them down. Since Cody and Jareth were not professionals, their search could disrupt or destroy important evidence. Therefore, the police instructed them to stop their search efforts. The police thoroughly searched the apartment, the surrounding residential area, and nearby squares and parks, but like Cody, they were unable to find anything. Cody's next-door neighbor, Robert, told the police that he had witnessed an unknown man running out of Cody's apartment that day. Although he could not provide further details, the neighbor's account raised suspicions. Therefore, the police decided to consult with the apartment manager to gain access to surveillance camera footage. They wanted to determine when and why Mikhail and the child disappeared. Whether she had run away or been kidnapped. There was speculation that a lover might have been involved, but Cody adamantly denied this. He said he had a happy family. Initially, police found no signs of forced entry, struggle, or blood in the family's apartment. Police also considered whether there had been a kidnapper. However, how could the perpetrator have entered without any signs of forced entry? It was probably someone Mikhail knew and trusted enough to open the door for. When police reviewed the surveillance footage, they found no evidence to support the neighbor's claim that a stranger had entered Mikhail's apartment. Instead of catching the mysterious stranger, the footage showed the neighbor taking a bag out of her apartment and throwing it in the apartment complex's trash bin. Mikhail and her son were not seen in the surveillance footage, raising suspicions about the neighbor's involvement in the disappearance. Meanwhile, Cody and Jarrett anxiously waited for news near home, eventually staying at another neighbor's apartment. Cody was expecting his wife and child to return. At 2 a.m., at the apartment where Cody was staying, the police knocked on the door. However, they did not have good news for Cody. Instead, they asked him to move to a hotel while the investigation was ongoing. The police stated that waiting was useless. They needed to take a closer look at the apartment and the area around the house. In fact, the police did not come by accident. They did not want to tell Cody that his child had been found dead, because they had to confirm the prime suspect. The next morning, Cody, who had not slept all night, went to the police station for questioning after leaving his home. The police asked him the usual questions to piece together the events of the previous day. However, many of the questions left him confused, leading him to suspect that something was wrong. The police then revealed that Noah's body was found in a trash can inside the residence. Noah had been strangled, with a man's sock in her mouth and a plastic bag over her head. Some of Mikhail's belongings were found, but her body was not found. Chance for his wife and children to return home safely was gone. Receiving news from the police, he was horrified and in pain when his child died tragically. During the night, Cody was asked to leave the apartment because the police did not want to draw attention to the arrest of the neighbor who lived next door. The police, skeptical of the neighbor Robert's story, visited him again and asked to check his apartment, where the police found a body in the bathroom. She was small and lying face down, but the worst part was that her entire body had been cut into pieces. Experts found evidence of sexual violence committed after her death. The Mikhails had only moved into the complex a few weeks ago. They had barely had time to see some of the neighbors. With Robert, they had hardly ever seen him. Cody thought they had a quiet, unassuming neighbor who didn't want to draw attention to himself. Robert kept his distance from everyone. Now, it was clear that the most dangerous guy was living among them, but no one knew about it. What the neighbors didn't know was that Robert Maid had been arrested on suspicion of murder and child abuse. During a background check, police discovered that Robert had a criminal record with 24 convictions, including 2 for sexual violence. He was first charged with a felony for assaulting a girl in the early 2000s. It is unclear whether he ever served any prison time for this crime. Then, in 2012, Robert was charged with a brutal sex crime. He posed as a nanny to gain the trust of a couple and, when he picked up their child, raped the child instead of going for a walk in the park. He is suspected of being involved in other similar incidents. Robert was arrested and convicted for this crime, but only served 3 years. While in prison, he attended a special rehabilitation program for sex offenders, received psychological support, and attended church regularly. Robert was released from prison after psychiatrists deemed him ready to re-enter society. However, this assessment proved to be incorrect. Just a few years after his release, he expressed a desire to harm innocent people. The police reviewed his test results while in prison and found that he had not been rehabilitated. Instead, he preferred to attack children and young women for the thrill of it. Since there was no legal basis to detain him any longer, Edmonton police could only warn that Robert was dangerous and likely to harm someone again. This man was clearly a threat to women, and especially young children. In order to protect society from potential rapists, many restrictions were placed on him. Specifically, he was prohibited from being near children and women, and could not live near schools or parks. Robert was also subject to a curfew and could only leave Edmonton with official permission from his supervising police officer. After his release from prison, he strictly followed these regulations for many years. He was monitored, so he did not appear in crime reports. However, over time it became clear that he had been waiting for an opportunity to commit a crime. Under Canadian law, a convicted sex offender can be removed from the Dangerous Offender Register if they have not been involved in any similar incidents for a year. In June 2020, this happened to one such offender. Despite his extensive criminal history, a court decision removed the rapist from police supervision. This allowed him, to move to a new residential area, a move that had previously been restricted. Now, he is unsupervised and unmonitored. The public was outraged by the tragic situation. By removing the restrictions on the offender, the police endangered the lives of women and children in the area. Cody said people deserved to know that they were living near a dangerous rapist, giving them the opportunity to relocate if necessary. The investigation found that 2 victims were killed before police were notified. It was discovered that Robert and the victims were just neighbors in a senior housing complex. They did not know or communicate with each other. During questioning, Robert openly confessed to these motives. As before, he informed the police staff. He struggled with the urge to kill and physically abuse at the same time. He admitted that he was a sick person who needed to be prayed for and confessed that he enjoyed the process. Robert believed that he needed to be isolated from society, otherwise, he feared that he would repeat his actions. Cody, who had just lost his entire family, was visited by his brothers, friends, co-workers, neighbors, and concerned citizens who came to pay their respects. It was believed that if there had not been a system error, the police would have continued to monitor this dangerous criminal and McHale would still be alive. Cody attended all the hearings, wearing his wife's wedding ring around his neck and carrying a blue blanket. Deeply saddened, he was determined to defend his rights. Even through tears, he insisted that ordinary citizens should be informed about potentially dangerous criminals living nearby. Until recently, ordinary Canadians did not have access to databases of dangerous criminals. Wanting to protect other families, Cody McConnell launched a campaign to change the existing laws. The effort, dubbed Noah's Law in honor of his young son. Robert pleaded guilty to all charges and recounted the events of that day in court. He said that after Cody left for work, Cody's wife and son went for a walk in a nearby park. When they returned home, they encountered the apartment manager. The manager informed McHale that Cody had made a mess in the hallway the day before and asked him to clean it up. Sure enough, Cody had made a mess the day before, leaving a mark. McHale apologized for the mess and promised to clean it up, she planning to do so later. At that moment, Robert overheard the conversation and saw it as the perfect opportunity to act. McHale entered the apartment with the child, fed Noah, and planned to put him to bed. While the child was playing, McHale began cooking dinner and called her friend. During the phone conversation, there was a knock on the door. The friend later testified that she had heard the knock, although it was faint due to the distance. Robert offered to help clean up since she was busy watching the child. The woman thanked him for his help and agreed. Her conversation with her friend then ended. After cleaning up, Robert found an excuse to enter McHale's apartment. when he gained access to her home. Suddenly, Robert attacked her, strangling her with his hands for about 10 minutes. Even then, Mikhail still showed signs of life, so Robert took an electrical cord from an appliance and wrapped it around her neck until she stopped breathing. He raped her, then quietly dragged her to his apartment through the hallway, placing her in the bathroom. Robert then took a knife and inflicted wounds on her body, even removing some of her organs. The police could not find these organs during the investigation, and they were not found in the trash cans, like Noah. Meanwhile, the child was still alive and in the apartment. However, Robert considered the child a threat, so he decided to get rid of the child. He took the child to his apartment and tried to gag the child with a sock. He then suffocated the child by placing a plastic bag over his head. He then placed the body in a trash bag and threw it in a dumpster. During the trial, Robert's behavior was inconsistent. He insists that he is not a bad person and blames mental health issues. However, he also admits that he needs to be separated from society. The idea is that criminals should never be removed from the database if they pose an increased threat. There should be increased police surveillance without any time limits. It is also suggested that residents in nearby areas should be notified if there is a potentially dangerous person living near them. Cody stated that he would never move his family into the same apartment complex as someone like Robert. Currently, the dissemination of requests and proposals to protect the rights of all residents in the country continues. This theme resonates and continues to grow. During the trial, Robert Keith Major, 55, was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years.